I should have known something was wrong when my twin sister showed up to Christmas dinner wearing a Cartier bracelet worth more than my rent. My name is Skylar, and I'm about to tell you how my own family systematically destroyed my life, and how I made sure they paid for every single penny. Let me paint you a picture of my childhood. Picture this. 2 identical twins, born 3 minutes apart. Lexi came out first, screaming bloody murder and demanding attention. I followed quietly, apparently already resigned to being second place. That pretty much set the tone for the next 28 years. Every ballet recital, every school play, every family gathering. Lexi was the star. She'd pirouette across the stage in her pink tutu while I sat in the audience, watching our parents beam with pride. When report cards came home, Mum would coo over Lexi's C+ in art class, while barely glancing at my straight A's. Skylar's just naturally smart, Dad would say, ruffling my hair absently. She doesn't need the encouragement. What I needed was to matter. What I got was a pat on the head and the expectation that I'd always be fine on my own. Our grandfather changed everything when he died 5 years ago. Harold Whitfield was old school money, the kind of man who wore 3-piece suits to breakfast and believed character was built through adversity. He left each of his grandchildren a trust fund, substantial ones. Mine, Lexi's, and our younger brother Zachary's was supposed to be managed by Uncle Jeffrey until we turned 30. Equal shares, Grandfather had said in his will, to give each child the foundation for a meaningful life. I remember the day Jeffrey explained the trust to us. We were all sitting in his mahogany-panelled office, the kind of place that smelled like leather and old money. Lexi was texting throughout the entire meeting, her manicured nails clicking against her phone screen. The funds will be distributed monthly, Jeffrey said, sliding papers across his desk. Enough to cover living expenses, education, and reasonable lifestyle costs. Define reasonable, Lexi had said, finally looking up from her phone. Jeffrey smiled indulgently. Don't worry, sweetheart, you'll be well taken care of. That should have been my first red flag. For the first year, everything seemed normal. I used my monthly distribution to pay for my tiny studio apartment, groceries, and to save for law school. Lexi moved into a trendy loft downtown and started what she called her lifestyle brand, basically posting Instagram photos of her brunch plates and designer handbags. But then I started noticing things. Lexi's apartment got bigger. Her clothes got more expensive. Her vacations got more exotic. Meanwhile, my monthly distribution stayed exactly the same, barely enough to cover rent and ramen noodles. Mum, I said one evening, when I'd worked up the courage to visit their house, I think there might be an issue with my trust fund. She was arranging flowers in the foyer, the kind of elaborate arrangement that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. What kind of issue, honey? The amount seems smaller than it should be, and Lexi's lifestyle seems to be getting more expensive every month. Mum's hands stilled on the roses. Skylar, you know your sister has different needs than you do. Different needs. Lexi's building her brand. She needs to maintain a certain image. You're more practical. You've always been good with money. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Are you saying her trust fund is bigger than mine? I'm saying Jeffrey knows what he's doing. He's making sure both of you are taken care of appropriately. Dad walked in then, loosening his tie after another day at his consulting firm. What's going on? Skylar's worried about money, Mum said, her tone suggesting I was being dramatic. You'll be fine, kiddo, Dad said, not even looking at me as he headed for his study. You always land on your feet. That night, I sat in my studio apartment eating cereal for dinner and staring at my bank statement. The numbers didn't lie. While Lexi was posting photos from Cabo, I was counting quarters to do laundry. I pulled out my laptop and started researching trust fund law. What I found made my blood run cold. Executors had broad discretion in fund management, but they were supposed to act in the beneficiary's best interests. All beneficiaries. I sent myself an email that night, the subject line reading, "I think they're stealing from me." I had no idea that email would become the first piece of evidence in the case that would destroy my entire family. 6 months later, I was working double shifts at a coffee shop while Lexi bought a BMW. "Can you believe this weather?" my co-worker Janet said, wiping down the espresso machine. "Perfect day for the beach." I nodded, calculating tips in my head. $43. Enough for groceries if I stuck to the clearance section. The bell above the door chimed, and my stomach dropped. Lexi strutted in wearing a sundress that probably cost more than I made in a week. Designer sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. "Oh my God, Skylar!" She rushed over, her heels clicking on the tile floor. "I didn't know you worked here." "Yeah, well, someone has to pay the bills." She ordered a complicated drink, oat milk latte with vanilla syrup and extra foam, then leaned against the counter while I made it. "So I have the most amazing news," she said, pulling out her phone. "Look at this." The screen showed a sleek black BMW convertible with a giant red bow on the hood. "Early birthday present from Uncle Jeffrey," she squealed. "He said I deserve something special after all my hard work on the brand." I nearly dropped the milk steamer. "He bought you a car?" "Well, technically the trust bought it. But Jeffrey said it was a business expense since I need reliable transportation for meetings." "What meetings?" Lexi waved her hand dismissively. "Influencer stuff. You wouldn't understand." I finished her drink with shaking hands and slid it across the counter. "That'll be $6.50. "Oh, can you just comp it? Family discount?" She winked. "I can't comp drinks, Lexi." She sighed dramatically and pulled out a credit card, black, with her name embossed in gold letters. "Fine, but this is so awkward." After she left, I stood there staring at the credit card receipt. The name on the card wasn't just Lexi Ramos. It was Lexi Ramos, Whitfield Trust Account. That evening, I spread law school applications across my tiny kitchen table. The deadlines were approaching fast, and I still needed to figure out how to pay for the LSAT prep course. My phone buzzed. A text from Mum. "Family dinner Sunday, 6 p.m, don't be late." Sunday dinner at my parents' house was always an exercise in feeling inadequate, but I went anyway. Maybe I was a glutton for punishment. I arrived to find Lexi already there, showing off her new jewellery to Mom in the living room. "These are from that little boutique in Soho," Lexi was saying, turning her wrist to catch the light on a tennis bracelet. "The owner personally selected them for me." "They're gorgeous, sweetheart," Mom cooed. "You have such exquisite taste." I cleared my throat. "Hey, everyone." "Skylar," Dad called from his recliner. "How's the coffee business?" "It's fine. Actually, I wanted to talk to you all about something." Lexi looked up from her bracelet display. "Please tell me you're not going to lecture us about money again." "I'm not lecturing anyone. I'm asking questions." I pulled out a folder I'd been preparing. "I've been looking into trust fund regulations, and I think there might be some irregularities in how mine is being managed." The room went quiet except for the ticking of the grandfather clock. "What kind of irregularities?" Dad asked, his voice careful. "Well, for starters, Lexi just got a BMW charged to her trust account as a business expense. Meanwhile, I can barely afford groceries." "Lexi's building something," Mum said sharply. "She needs investment capital." "Investment capital for what?" "Instagram posts." Lexi stood up, her face flushed. "Excuse me? My brand is a legitimate business venture." "What business? You post pictures of your breakfast?" "I have over 50,000 followers." "Followers don't pay the bills, Lexi." "Girls, please," Dad said. But his voice lacked conviction. Mum crossed her arms. "Skylar, your sister has different needs than you do. She's always been more social, more creative. She needs resources to nurture those gifts." "And what about my gifts? What about law school?" "You're smart enough to get scholarships," Mum said. "You don't need handouts." The word handouts hit me like a slap. "It's not a handout. It's my inheritance." "It's family money," Dad said quietly. "And family takes care of family." "Then why am I working 60 hours a week while Lexi gets cars and jewellery?" Lexi threw her hands up. "Because you're bitter and jealous. You've always resented that people actually like me." "People like your money, Lexi. There's a difference." She gasped, like I'd physically struck her. "How dare you?" "Enough." Mum stood between us. "Skylar, I think you should leave." I stared at her, my own mother, choosing sides like she had my entire life. Fine. But this isn't over. As I walked to my beat-up Honda, I heard Lexi crying inside, Mum comforting her with soothing words she'd never used for me. That night, I called every legal aid clinic in the city until I found someone willing to talk. Marcus Young, an estate attorney, agreed to meet me for coffee. "Bring everything," he said. "Bank statements, trust documents, anything you can find." I hung up and looked around my studio apartment. On my desk sat a framed photo of grandfather from his funeral. He'd always talked about integrity, about earning what you received. "They don't realize what they've created," I whispered to his picture. The next morning, I found something that changed everything. Hidden in my old college textbooks was a folder I'd forgotten about. Documents from grandfather's estate that Jeffrey had given me years ago. Most of it was standard legal language, but one page made my heart race. It was a partial copy of the will, and at the bottom, cut off mid-sentence, were the words, "In the event of fraudulent or dishonest behaviour by any beneficiary." The rest was missing, but I knew Jeffrey had the complete version locked away in his office. I was going to find it. Marcus Young's office smelled like old books and fresh coffee. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe late 30s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "So you think your uncle is embezzling from your trust fund?" he asked, spreading my documents across his desk. "I don't think it. I know it." I pulled out my phone and showed him Lexi's Instagram. "This is from last week. She's in the Maldives. The week before she was shopping in Milan." Marcus scrolled through the photos, his eyebrows rising. "And your monthly distribution is?" $1,800, barely covers rent. While hers appears to be... He gestured at a photo of Lexi in a private jet. "Considerably more. The thing is, I found this." I handed him the partial will document. "It mentions something about fraudulent behaviour, but the rest is cut off." Marcus studied the paper carefully. "This is interesting, very interesting, but we need the complete document. Jeffrey has it locked in his office safe. Then we need to find another way to get it." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "What about the original lawyer who drafted the will?" "Matthew Murphy. He's still practicing, but he works closely with Jeffrey now." "Perfect. Let me make a call." While Marcus worked his legal magic, I threw myself into survival mode. I picked up a second job waiting tables at a diner, working nights after my coffee shop shifts. The money was terrible, but every dollar counted. My friend Fatima found me there one evening, dead on my feet after a 14-hour day. "Skylar? What the hell?" She slid into a booth, her nurse scrubs wrinkled from her own long shift. "You look like death." "Thanks for the pep talk." I poured her coffee without being asked. "I'm serious. When's the last time you slept?" "Sleep is for people who don't have to pay rent in quarters." Fatima grabbed my wrist. "Talk to me. What's really going on?" I glanced around the empty diner, then sat across from her. "My family is stealing from me." "What do you mean stealing?" I told her everything. The trust fund, Lexi's lifestyle, my parents' dismissal, the partial will document. Fatima listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail. "Those bastards," she said finally. "Your own family? The worst part is they act like I'm being unreasonable, like I should be grateful for scraps while Lexi lives like a princess." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to get what's mine. All of it." The next week, Marcus called with news. "I spoke with Matthew Murphy. He's willing to meet, but he's nervous about discussing the trust without Jeffrey present." "Can you get him to talk?" "Maybe, but I need you to be very careful about what you say. We can't let Jeffrey know we're investigating." The meeting was set for the following Tuesday at Matthew's downtown office. I took the morning off from both jobs, which meant losing money I couldn't afford to lose. Matthew Murphy was exactly what you'd expect from a trust fund lawyer. Expensive suit, perfect teeth, and the kind of handshake that said he'd never worried about rent money. "Miss Schuyler," he said, gesturing to a leather chair. "Marcus tells me you have some questions about your grandfather's estate." "Just trying to understand the distribution structure," I said carefully. "It seems like there might be some discrepancies." Matthew's smile flickered. "Discrepancies?" "The monthly amounts don't seem to match what I understood from the original will." "Well, Jeffrey has broad discretionary powers as executor. He's authorized to adjust distributions based on individual needs and circumstances. What kind of circumstances? Matthew glanced at Marcus, then back at me. Educational expenses, business investments, lifestyle maintenance. Your sister's brand development, for instance, requires significant capital investment. And my law school plans? Have you formally applied? Submitted a business plan for your education? I felt heat rise in my cheeks. I didn't know I needed a business plan to use my own inheritance for school. It's not quite that simple, Matthew said. The trust has specific guidelines about educational disbursements. Can I see those guidelines? Another glance at Marcus. I'd need to check with Jeffrey about releasing additional documentation. Of course you would. Marcus stepped in smoothly. What about the integrity provisions? I believe Harold mentioned something about character requirements for beneficiaries. Matthew went very still. I'm not sure what you mean. The clause about fraudulent behaviour. It was mentioned in some preliminary documents. I really can't discuss specific provisions without Jeffrey's approval, but his face had gone pale, and I knew we'd hit something important. That evening, I was walking home from my diner shift when I saw them. Lexi and her best friend Kinley stumbling out of an upscale cocktail bar, clearly drunk and laughing loudly. "Skylar!" Lexi spotted me and waved dramatically. "Oh my God, you look so tired," Kinley giggled. "Is that your work uniform?" I looked down at my stained apron and polyester dress. "Yeah, some of us have jobs." "Jobs are so overrated," Lexi said, swaying slightly. "I made $3,000 today just posting about face masks." $3,000? Brand partnership, Kinley explained. Lexi's rate is like $500 per post now. Plus, Uncle Jeffrey approved a new marketing budget, Lexi added. $20,000 for brand development. My vision went red. $20,000? Don't be jealous, Skylar. Not everyone can be an influencer. You're right, I said quietly. Not everyone can steal from their family and call it a career. Lexi's face twisted. Excuse me? You heard me. I'm not stealing anything. This is my money. Is it? Because last I checked, we were supposed to have equal trusts. Kinley stepped between us. Maybe we should go, Lex. No, I want to hear this, Lexi said, her voice getting louder. Tell me how I'm stealing, Skylar. Tell me how your boring, bitter life is somehow my fault. People were starting to stare. A few had their phones out. You want to know the truth? I stepped closer. You're a spoiled brat who's never worked a day in her life, and you're bleeding our grandfather's legacy dry while I work 60 hours a week just to survive. At least I'm not a jealous loser who can't stand to see her sister succeed. Succeed at what? Taking selfies? Lexi threw her drink at me. The cold liquid hit my chest, soaking through my uniform. You're pathetic, she hissed. No wonder Mum and Dad don't care about you. I stood there dripping, surrounded by strangers with cameras, while my twin sister laughed at my humiliation. You're right, I said finally. I am pathetic, but not for the reasons you think. I walked away, leaving them giggling behind me. But as I turned the corner, I heard Kinley say something that made me stop. God, Lex, you're so lucky your uncle hooked you up with that trust fund access. Most people have to wait until they're 30. I know, right? Jeffrey's the best. He totally gets that I need the money now, not later. I pulled out my phone and started recording. The next morning, Marcus called with the breakthrough we'd been waiting for. I know how to get into that safe, he said. But you're not going to like it. Try me. We're going to need Jeffrey's fingerprints. You want me to steal my uncle's fingerprints? I stared at Marcus across his desk. Not steal, borrow. He pulled out a small device that looked like a smartphone case. This scanner can lift prints from any smooth surface. Coffee cup, wine glass, door handle. This feels very illegal. It's a grey area, but if Jeffrey is embezzling from your trust, we need proof. I took the scanner, my hands shaking slightly. How do I even get close enough to him? Family dinner? Holiday party? Any social situation where he'd handle glassware? Perfect timing. Mum had texted that morning about Thanksgiving dinner. Actually, I might have an opportunity. 3 days later, I stood in my parents' kitchen, scanner hidden in my purse, watching Jeffrey carve the turkey like he owned the place. Skylar, honey, can you help me with the wine? Mom asked. I grabbed the bottle of expensive Bordeaux, probably worth more than my monthly rent, and started pouring. Jeffrey held out his glass first. "Thank you, sweetheart. You know, your mother tells me you're thinking about law school." "Thinking about it, yeah?" "Expensive endeavour. Have you considered other career paths? Something more practical?" I forced a smile. "Law seems pretty practical to me." Of course, but the debt load these days." He shook his head. "Lexi's approach is much smarter, building wealth through social media, leveraging her natural talents." "Right, her natural talents." Lexi bounced into the kitchen wearing a dress that probably cost more than my car. "Are we talking about my brand? I just hit 75,000 followers." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Jeffrey said, raising his glass. "To success." Everyone toasted. I watched Jeffrey's fingers wrap around the crystal stem, leaving perfect prints. After dinner, I volunteered to do dishes. "You all relax. I've got this." I carefully collected Jeffrey's wine glass, wrapping it in a dish towel. In the bathroom, I used Marcus's scanner, watching the green light confirm a successful capture. "Got them," I texted Marcus. "Perfect. Meet me at the office tomorrow at 6 a.m. Jeffrey's law firm occupied 3 floors of a downtown high-rise. At 6 a.m. on a Saturday, the building was empty, except for security guards who barely looked up from their newspapers. Marcus had somehow gotten us access. I didn't ask how. We took the elevator to the 15th floor, my heart pounding with each ding. "His office is down here," Marcus whispered, leading me through a maze of mahogany and marble. Jeffrey's office was exactly what you'd expect. Massive desk, leather chairs, and walls lined with law books that probably hadn't been opened in years. Behind his desk sat a large safe, built into the wall. "There," I pointed. Marcus pulled out the scanner and pressed it against the safe's fingerprint reader. Nothing happened. "Try again," I whispered. He pressed it again. Still nothing. "Maybe the angle's wrong," I suggested. On the 3rd try, the safe clicked open. Inside were stacks of documents, some cash, and several file folders. Marcus grabbed everything while I kept watch at the door. "Holy shit," he breathed, flipping through papers. "Skylar, look at this." He handed me a document titled Whitfield Family Trust, Complete Distribution Records. The numbers made my stomach drop. Over the past 3 years, Lexi had received $847,000 from the trust. I'd received $97,000. "That can't be right," I whispered. "It gets worse." Marcus showed me another page. "Look at the approved expenses. BMW, $85,000. European vacation, $23,000. Apartment deposit and 6 months rent, $31,000. Designer wardrobe, $18,000. The list went on and on. "She's been living off nearly $1 million while I've been eating ramen," I said. "Keep looking," Marcus said, still digging through files. I found it at the bottom of the stack, the complete will, including the section that had been cut off from my copy. In the event of fraudulent or dishonest behaviour by any beneficiary, or the misuse of trust funds for purposes contrary to the grantor's intentions, said beneficiary shall forfeit their entire share of the trust. The forfeited amount shall be redistributed to the remaining honest beneficiaries, with preference given to those who have demonstrated integrity and responsible financial management. I read it 3 times to make sure I understood. "Marcus," I said quietly, "if Lexi has been using trust money fraudulently, she loses everything, and it all goes to you. What about Jeffrey? He's the one who approved the distributions." Marcus flipped to another section. "Executors who breach their fiduciary duty are subject to criminal prosecution and personal liability for all misappropriated funds." We photographed everything, then carefully returned the documents to the safe. As we left the building, I felt like I was walking on air. "What's our next move?" I asked. "We need more evidence. Recordings, witnesses, documentation of the fraudulent expenses." "I already have some recordings from that night outside the bar." "Good. But we need more. Can you get Lexi to admit to misusing the funds?" "She's not exactly subtle when she's drunk." "Perfect. Set up another encounter. Get her talking about her expenses, how Jeffrey helps her access the money." That afternoon, I called Lexi. "Hey, it's me. I wanted to apologize for Thanksgiving. I was stressed about work. Oh, she sounded surprised. Okay. Want to grab drinks tonight? My treat. Your treat? Can you afford that? I gritted my teeth. I can manage one round. We met at the same upscale bar where she'd thrown her drink at me. I ordered the cheapest wine on the menu and let her get expensive cocktails. So how's the brand going? I asked, phone recording in my purse. Amazing. Jeffrey just approved another marketing budget increase. $25,000 this time. Wow, that's a lot. How does that work exactly? Oh, it's easy. I just tell him what I need for business expenses, and he transfers it from the trust. No questions asked. No questions at all? Well, sometimes he asks for receipts, but honestly, I just make stuff up. Like, I'll say I spent $3,000 on a photo shoot when really I bought shoes. She giggled. He never checks. That's convenient. I know, right? Mom always said Jeffrey would take care of me, and he totally does. Way better than he takes care of you. What do you mean? Come on, Skylar. You think it's an accident that your distributions are so small? Jeffrey knows you don't need much. You're not building anything important. My hands clenched around my wine glass. And what you're doing is important? Of course. I'm an influencer. I'm building a brand, creating content, inspiring people. By posting pictures of your breakfast. You're so jealous, she slurred, already on her third cocktail. You can't stand that I'm successful and you're not. You're right, I said. I am jealous. Jealous that you get to steal from our grandfather's legacy while I work myself to death. I'm not stealing anything. Then what do you call using trust money to buy designer clothes and calling it a business expense? Lexi's face went red. That's not... Jeffrey said it was fine. Jeffrey said fraud was fine. It's not fraud. It's creative accounting. I smiled and finished my wine. Thanks for clearing that up. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Matthew Murphy. Miss Schuyler, your uncle would like to schedule a family meeting. He says it's time to address your concerns about the trust once and for all. When? This Friday at 2 p.m, his office. I hung up and immediately called Marcus. They're calling a meeting, I said. Perfect. That means they're worried. Are you ready for this? I've been ready for 3 years. Remember, once you play this card, there's no going back. Your family will never forgive you. I thought about Lexi's laughter as she threw her drink at me, about my parents dismissing my concerns, about Jeffrey's condescending smile. Good, I said. I don't want their forgiveness. I want justice. Friday morning, I met Marcus and Fatima at a diner near Jeffrey's office. My hands shook as I tried to eat breakfast. You don't have to do this, Fatima said, squeezing my arm. We could find another way. There is no other way. I pushed eggs around my plate. They've had 3 years to do the right thing. Marcus spread documents across the table. Everything's here. Bank records, recordings, the complete will. Your case is airtight. What if they deny everything? They can't. The numbers don't lie. He tapped a folder thick with evidence. Jeffrey embezzled over $700,000. Lexi knowingly participated in fraud. Your parents enabled it. And Zachary? Clean. His distributions have been exactly what they should be. I thought about my younger brother, always quiet at family gatherings, always watching. He knew something was wrong. Smart kid. He stayed out of it. At 1:45 p.m, I walked into Jeffrey's office building. The elevator ride felt like ascending to my own execution, except I wasn't the one who was going to die today. The conference room was exactly as I'd imagined. Long mahogany table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Everyone was already there when I arrived. Jeffrey sat at the head of the table in his expensive suit, looking every inch the successful attorney. Mom and Dad flanked him on one side, both wearing their disappointed parent expressions. Lexi sat across from them, scrolling through her phone and looking bored. Zachary had claimed the chair farthest from everyone else. Skylar, Jeffrey said, standing to shake my hand. Thank you for coming. Thanks for finally agreeing to meet. Matthew Murphy sat near the windows with a legal pad, ready to take notes. Marcus entered behind me and took the seat next to mine. I wasn't aware you were bringing representation, Jeffrey said, his smile tightening, I wasn't aware I needed it, I replied. But here we are. Jeffrey gestured for everyone to sit. Well then, let's clear this up once and for all. Skylar, you've expressed concerns about your trust fund management. I want to address those concerns directly. Good. Let's start with the numbers. I pulled out my folder and placed it on the table. According to my records, over the past 3 years, I have received approximately $97,000 from the trust. That sounds about right, Jeffrey nodded. And Lexi has received $847,000. The room went silent. Lexi looked up from her phone. That can't be right, Mum said quickly. It's exactly right. I slid copies of the bank records across the table. Every transaction, every transfer, every business expense. Jeffrey's face had gone pale, but he maintained his composure. Lexi's situation is more complex. She has legitimate business expenses that require business expenses like an $85,000 BMW. That was a necessary investment in her brand. What about the $23,000 European vacation? Networking opportunities? The $18,000 shopping spree at Bergdorf's? Jeffrey's jaw tightened. I don't appreciate your tone, Skylar. And I don't appreciate being robbed by my own family. Nobody robbed you. Lexi finally spoke up. You're just jealous because I actually made something of myself. Made something of yourself? You're a professional Instagram poster living off stolen money. It's not stolen. Uncle Jeffrey approved everything. Did he approve you lying about expenses? Making up fake business receipts? Lexi's face went red. I never... You told me yourself. Last week at the bar, you said you made up receipts and Jeffrey never checked. I was drunk, I didn't mean... So you admit you lied about expenses? That's not... Jeffrey, tell her. All eyes turned to Jeffrey, who was staring at the bank records like they might spontaneously combust. There may have been some irregularities in the documentation process, he said carefully. Irregularities? Marcus spoke for the first time. Mr. Jeffrey, you've systematically embezzled from one beneficiary to fund another's lifestyle. That's not an irregularity, that's fraud. Now wait just a minute. No, you wait. I stood up, my voice getting stronger. I've waited 3 years. I've worked 60-hour weeks while my sister bought sports cars. I've eaten ramen while she vacationed in Europe. I've been treated like a second-class citizen in my own family while you all got rich off my inheritance. Skylar, please, Dad said. Let's discuss this calmly. Calmly? Dad? They stole from me. Your brother stole from your daughter, and you did nothing. We didn't know. You didn't want to know. It was easy to let Jeffrey handle everything, while Lexi got whatever she wanted. Mum's voice was shaky. We thought Jeffrey was being fair. Fair, I laughed bitterly. When has anything in this family ever been fair to me? Zachary cleared his throat. Actually, I tried to tell you guys something was wrong. Everyone turned to look at him. Last Christmas, when Lexi showed up with that Cartier bracelet, I asked Jeffrey how she could afford it on her trust allowance. He told me to mind my own business. Zachary, you never said anything to us, Mum protested. Would you have listened? You never listen when it comes to Lexi. The room fell silent again. I could hear the city traffic 15 floors below, the hum of the air conditioning, the scratch of Matthew's pen on his legal pad. Here's what's going to happen, I said, pulling out another document. I'm invoking the integrity clause in Grandfather's will. Jeffrey's face went white. The what? The integrity clause, the one you conveniently forgot to mention. I began reading aloud. In the event of fraudulent or dishonest behaviour by any beneficiary, or the misuse of trust funds for purposes contrary to the grantor's intentions, said beneficiary shall forfeit their entire share of the trust. That's not... You can't... Jeffrey stammered. The forfeited amount shall be redistributed to the remaining honest beneficiaries, I continued. Lexi stood up so fast her chair fell over. What does that mean? I looked directly at her. My twin sister, my mirror image, the person who had taken everything from me. It means you lose it all, Lexi, every penny, and it all comes to me. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Jeffrey found his voice. You can't prove fraud. I smiled and pulled out my phone, setting it on the table. Actually, I can. I pressed play on Lexi's recorded confession from the bar. Her own voice filled the room. I just tell him what I need for business expenses, and he transfers it from the trust. No questions asked. Sometimes he asks for receipts, but honestly, I just make stuff up. Lexi's face crumpled. You recorded me? You recorded yourself. I was just there to listen. The recording kept playing, Lexi's voice echoing through the conference room like a confession at trial. Like, I'll say I spent $3,000 on a photo shoot, when really I bought shoes. He never checks. Jeffrey lunged for my phone, but Marcus was faster, grabbing his wrist. Don't, Marcus said quietly. You're in enough trouble already. Turn it off, bah! Lexi screamed. Turn it off right now! I let it play to the end, where her voice got even more damning. Jeffrey knows you don't need much. You're not building anything important. When it finished, the silence was suffocating. That recording is inadmissible, Jeffrey said, his lawyer instincts kicking in. She didn't consent to being recorded. Actually, she did, Marcus replied smoothly. This is a one-party consent state. Skylar was part of the conversation. It's entrapment. No, it's evidence. Evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud. Dad finally spoke up, his voice hollow. Jeffrey, please tell me this isn't true. Bryant, I can explain. Explain what? That you've been stealing from my daughter for 3 years? I wasn't stealing. I was managing the trust according to what I thought was best for both girls. Best for both girls? I slammed my hand on the table. How was giving Lexi nearly $1 million while I got scraps best for me? You're responsible. You don't need as much. That wasn't your decision to make. Mum was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Jeffrey, how could you do this to us? Charlotte, you have to understand. I understand perfectly, she sobbed. You destroyed our family. Lexi was pacing behind her chair, her face red and blotchy. This is insane. You can't take my money. It was never your money, I said. It was our grandfather's money, meant to be distributed equally. I earned it. I built a brand. I have followers. You built a lie funded by theft. I'm not a thief. I pulled out another document. Really? Because according to this credit card statement, you charged $15,000 in business meals to the trust last month. But according to your Instagram posts, you were home sick with the flu for 2 weeks. Lexi's mouth opened and closed like a fish. And this receipt for a marketing consultation that was actually a spa weekend in Napa. Those were legitimate. Stop lying, Zachary exploded, speaking louder than I'd ever heard him. Just stop. We all know what you did. Everyone stared at him. Our quiet little brother, finally finding his voice. I've watched this family tear itself apart for 3 years, he continued. I've watched Skylar work herself to death while Lexi bought cars and jewellery. I've watched Mum and Dad pretend everything was fine while their daughter was being robbed blind. Zachary, please, Mum started. No, I'm done being quiet. Lexi is a fraud, Jeffrey is a criminal, and you two are enablers. How dare you speak to your parents that way? Dad stood up, his face flushed. How dare you let this happen to Skylar? The room erupted. Everyone was shouting at once. Jeffrey was yelling about legal technicalities. Lexi was screaming about being betrayed. Mum was sobbing about her family falling apart. Dad was demanding respect. I sat in the middle of it all, watching my family destroy itself, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Marcus stood up and whistled sharply. The room fell silent. If I may, he said calmly, we have a legal situation here that needs to be addressed. He pulled out a thick folder. These are the papers to invoke the integrity clause. Based on the evidence we've presented, fraudulent expense reports, recorded admissions of deception, and systematic embezzlement, Lexi has violated the terms of the trust. You can't do this, Jeffrey said desperately. I'm the executor. I have final say. Actually, you don't? Marcus smiled. The integrity clause supersedes executor authority. And given your participation in the fraud, you're facing criminal charges. Criminal charges? Mum gasped. Embezzlement, breach of fiduciary duty, conspiracy to commit fraud. The DA is going to love this case. Jeffrey's face went grey. Now wait, let's not be hasty. Hasty? I stood up again. 3 years of theft is hasty. Skylar, please, we can work this out, Dad pleaded. We're family. Family doesn't steal from each other. We can pay you back, Mum said through her tears. Jeffrey can transfer more money to your account. With what money? Lexi's already spent most of it. Lexi finally stopped pacing. I can sell things. The car, the jewelry. The car you can't afford the payments on? The jewelry you bought with stolen money? It's not stolen. Then explain this. I pulled out the final document, Jeffrey's own financial records. Your uncle has been taking a management fee of 15% on every fraudulent transaction. He's made over $100,000 helping you steal from me. The room went dead silent. Jeffrey's shoulders sagged. Skylar, just don't. I looked around the table at my family. My crying mother, my defeated father, my panicked sister, my furious uncle. Only Zachary met my eyes, and he nodded slightly. Here's what's going to happen, I said. Marcus is filing the paperwork to invoke the integrity clause today. Lexi's share of the trust, all of it, transfers to me immediately. That's over $2 million, Matthew said quietly, speaking for the first time since the meeting started. That's what she would have inherited at 30, plus what she's already stolen, plus interest. Skylar, you can't... Lexi started. I can, and I will. Jeffrey, you're being reported to the state bar and the district attorney. Your law license is gone, and you'll probably face jail time. Jeffrey slumped in his chair like a deflated balloon. Mum, Dad, your precious daughter is about to be cut off completely. No more trust fund, no more family money, no more enabling her lifestyle. What about us? Dad asked quietly. What about you? You chose your side 3 years ago. I gathered my documents and stood up. Marcus followed suit. The paperwork will be filed by close of business today, I said. Lexi's accounts will be frozen pending the transfer. Jeffrey's access to the trust is revoked immediately. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and Lexi? You might want to start looking for a real job. Instagram doesn't pay the bills. As I reached for the door handle, Zachary's voice stopped me. Skylar, wait. I turned back to my little brother. Did it feel worth it? I looked at my family one last time, broken, crying, destroyed by their own greed. Ask me tomorrow. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Skylar, please call me back. We need to talk. Mum, you've destroyed our family. Dad, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. Lexi, the bank froze my accounts. How am I supposed to pay rent? Lexi again, please don't do this. I'm begging you. Jeffrey. I deleted them all and made coffee in my tiny kitchen. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't calculating whether I could afford the good beans. Marcus called at 8 a.m. sharp. It's done, he said. The paperwork went through. As of this morning, you're the sole beneficiary of the remaining trust funds. How much? $2.7 million. I sat down hard on my couch. Jesus. That's after legal fees and penalties. Lexi's accounts are frozen. Jeffrey's been suspended pending investigation, and the DA wants to meet with you next week. What about my family? What about them? They made their choices. An hour later, someone was pounding on my door. I looked through the peephole and saw Lexi, still in yesterday's clothes, her makeup smeared and her hair a mess. Open the door, Skylar. I know you're in there. I opened it, and she pushed past me into my apartment. You have to fix this, she said, spinning around to face me. The bank called. They froze everything. My credit cards, my checking account, everything. I know. I can't pay my rent, I can't buy groceries, I can't even get gas for my car. Welcome to my world. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. This isn't funny. You're right, it's not funny, it's justice. Justice? You're destroying my life. I'm giving you the life you gave me. Lexi started crying, the ugly kind of crying that comes with real desperation. Skylar, please. I'm your sister. Are you? Because sisters don't steal from each other. I didn't steal. Jeffrey said it was okay. Jeffrey said fraud was okay, and you went along with it because it benefited you. She collapsed onto my couch, sobbing. What am I supposed to do? I don't know how to live like this. Get a job, like normal people. Doing what? I don't have any skills. Then learn some. Take classes, work retail, wait tables, figure it out. I can't work retail. Do you know who I am? Yeah, you're a broke 28-year-old with no job skills and a criminal record pending. She looked up at me, mascara streaking down her face. Criminal record? You committed fraud, Lexi. The DA is building a case. But I didn't know. You knew. The recording proves you knew. My phone rang. It was Dad. Don't answer it, Lexi begged. I answered anyway. Hi, Dad. Skylar, thank God. We need to talk. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Can you come to the house? Why? Jeffrey's here. He wants to make a deal. I looked at Lexi, still crying on my couch. What kind of deal? He'll return the management fees he took. $120,000. In exchange, you drop the criminal charges. And Lexi? She'll pay back what she can. Sell the car, the jewelry, everything. That won't even cover 10% of what she stole. It's a start. Please, Skylar, he's family. So am I hung up and looked at Lexi. Jeffrey wants to make a deal. What kind of deal? He'll give back his cut if I don't press charges. Hope flickered in her eyes. And me? You sell everything and pay back what you can. But that's not enough to cover. No, it's not. She was quiet for a long moment. What if I can't pay it all back? Then you'll owe me for the rest of your life. That's not fair, I laughed. Actually laughed. Fair? You want to talk about fair? I made mistakes, okay? But I don't deserve to lose everything. I made no mistakes, and I lost everything anyway. That's different. How? Because... She couldn't finish the sentence. Because you're the favourite. Because you're the pretty one, the charming one, the one who deserves nice things. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. It's what this whole family has always meant. My phone buzzed with a text from Zachary. Are you okay? I texted back, getting there. Can I see you later? He replied. Yes. Lexi was watching me text. Is that Zachary? Yeah. Is he mad at me too? What do you think? She started crying again. I've lost everyone. You lost everyone the day you decided to steal from me. I didn't mean for it to go this far. How far did you mean for it to go? 100,000? 500,000? When was enough going to be enough? She didn't answer because we both knew the truth. It never would have been enough. I need to go, she said finally, standing up. Where? I don't know. Figure out how to survive, I guess. She walked to the door, then turned back. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. After she left, I sat in my apartment, surrounded by silence. My phone kept buzzing with calls and texts from family members, but I ignored them all. At 6 p.m, Zachary knocked on my door. I let him in, and he looked around my tiny studio apartment. This is where you've been living? For 3 years. While Lexi had that penthouse. Yep. He sat down on my couch in the same spot where Lexi had been crying hours earlier. Mom and Dad are freaking out. I imagine they are. Jeffrey's talking about bankruptcy. Says the legal fees will ruin him. Good. Lexi's moving back in with them. She can't afford her apartment. Also good. Zachary was quiet for a moment. Do you feel better now? I thought about it. I feel vindicated. That's not the same thing. No, it's not. Are you going to take Jeffrey's deal? I don't know yet. What would Grandfather want you to do? I looked at the framed photo of him on my bookshelf. He'd want justice. Is this justice, or is this revenge? What's the difference? Zachary met my eyes. Justice restores balance. Revenge destroys everything. I didn't have an answer for that. 3 weeks after the family meeting, I stood in Jeffrey's office again. This time, he looked like a broken man. Wrinkled shirt, unshaven face. The kind of desperation that comes from watching your entire life crumble. Thank you for coming, he said, his voice hoarse. Marcus sat beside me. Briefcase full of legal documents. Across the table, Jeffrey's own lawyer looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Let's get this over with, I said. Jeffrey slid a cashier's check across the table. $120,000, every penny I took in management fees. I picked up the check, studying the numbers. This doesn't cover the interest you earned on stolen money. It's everything I have left. The state bar froze my other accounts pending the ethics investigation. What about the criminal charges? Jeffrey's lawyer cleared his throat. My client is prepared to plead guilty to breach of fiduciary duty in exchange for probation and restitution. No jail time? He's a first-time offender. White-collar crime. The DA is willing to deal? I looked at Jeffrey. This man who'd helped raise me, who'd bounced me on his knee as a child, who'd systematically robbed me for 3 years. What about Lexi? She's cooperating fully. Sold the car, the jewelry, everything. The proceeds go to you. How much? $47,000. I did the math in my head. Even with Jeffrey's restitution and Lexi's liquidated assets, I was still owed over $500,000. That's not enough. It's all we have, Jeffrey said quietly. Then Lexi owes me the rest, with interest. She can't pay what she doesn't have. Then she'll work for it. Minimum wage, every paycheck garnished until the debt is paid. Jeffrey's face crumpled. That could take decades. Should have thought of that before you helped her steal from me. Marcus leaned forward. There is another option. Everyone looked at him. Skylar could forgive the remaining debt in exchange for a public apology and admission of guilt. Absolutely not, I said immediately. Hear me out. Jeffrey pleads guilty, loses his law license, pays restitution. Lexi makes a public statement admitting to fraud, apologizing, and warning others about the consequences of financial crimes. And then what? They walk away clean. They walk away broke and humiliated. Jeffrey will never practice law again. Lexi's reputation is destroyed. They'll both struggle financially for years. I thought about it. What kind of public statement? Social media, local news, whatever platform she used to build her brand, she uses to confess her crimes. Jeffrey looked desperate. Skylar, please. She's learned her lesson. Has she? Before he could answer, my phone rang. It was Fatima. I'm in a meeting, I answered. Turn on Channel 7, now. I hung up and looked at Marcus. Can you pull up Channel 7 on your phone? He found the live stream. The reporter was standing outside a familiar downtown building. Exclusive interview with social media influencer Lexi, who claims she's the victim of a family conspiracy. My blood went cold. There was Lexi, perfectly made up, standing in front of the news van. My sister has always been jealous of my success, she was saying to the camera. She's using legal technicalities to steal my inheritance because she can't stand that I built something beautiful while she stayed bitter and small. You've got to be kidding me, Marcus muttered. The reporter asked, what about the allegations of fraud? Complete lies. My uncle managed my trust fund legally and appropriately. My sister is trying to destroy my family because she's never been able to accept that some people are just more talented than others. I stood up so fast my chair fell over. She's doing a press conference? Jeffrey was staring at the phone screen in horror. Lexi, what are you doing? On screen, Lexi continued. I'm the victim here. I'm the one whose accounts were frozen without warning. I'm the one being persecuted for being successful. Turn it off, Jeffrey begged. But I couldn't look away. Keep watching. The reporter pressed harder. But there are recordings of you admitting to falsifying business expenses. Lexi's perfect composure cracked slightly. Those recordings were taken without my consent. My sister tricked me when I was drunk and emotional. So you deny making false claims about business expenses? The expenses were legitimate business costs. Just because my sister doesn't understand social media marketing doesn't make them fraudulent. What about the BMW purchased with trust funds? A necessary business investment. Image is everything in my industry. I looked at Jeffrey. She's lying on television. Lexi, stop, he whispered to the screen. But Lexi was on a roll now. My grandfather left that money to help us build meaningful lives. I built a brand with hundreds of thousands of followers. I created content that inspired people. My sister worked at a coffee shop. The reporter asked, Are you saying your sister doesn't deserve her share of the inheritance? I'm saying some people use opportunities to build something beautiful, and others use them to tear down what others have built. I turned to Jeffrey. The deal's off. Skylar, please. She just lied to the entire city on live television, called me jealous and bitter, claimed she's the victim. She's scared. She's not thinking clearly. She's thinking clearly enough to do her makeup and call a press conference. Marcus was already packing up his briefcase. I'll file the paperwork to reject the plea deal. Wait, Jeffrey said desperately. What if I can get her to retract the statement? Too late. It's already online. Probably going viral as we speak. My phone was buzzing with notifications. Text messages, missed calls, social media alerts. She made her choice, I said. Now she lives with the consequences. Jeffrey's lawyer stood up. My client withdraws his offer. Smart move, Marcus replied. Because we're going for the full amount now, plus punitive damages for defamation. As we left the office, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not satisfaction or vindication. Relief. For 3 years, I'd wondered if I was crazy. If maybe I really was just jealous and bitter. If maybe Lexi really did deserve more because she was prettier, more charming, more likable. But watching her lie on television, watching her paint herself as the victim while calling me small and jealous, I finally understood the truth. This was who she'd always been. This was who they'd all always been. And I was done pretending otherwise. Marcus and I walked to the parking garage in comfortable silence. Finally, he spoke. You know this means war, right? No more family dinners. No more Christmas mornings. They'll never forgive you. I thought about Zachary's question. Did it feel worth it? Good, I said. I don't want their forgiveness. I want my life back. That evening, I sat in my apartment with my laptop, typing. Aita for destroying my family over a trust fund. Here's the whole story. I posted it to Reddit and closed the laptop. Within an hour, I had hundreds of responses. NTA. They literally stole from you. Your sister sounds like a narcissist. You're a badass. Get your money. Family doesn't mean you have to accept abuse. I smiled and made myself dinner. Real food, not ramen. Tomorrow, I'd start looking for a new apartment. Maybe something with actual windows. My phone rang. Zachary. I saw the news, he said. And? Lexi's an idiot. Yeah, she is. Are you okay? I looked around my tiny studio at the life I'd built from nothing, while my family tried to keep me small. I'm perfect. And for the first time in 3 years, I meant it.
Hello everyone, I'm Jamie, and today I'd like to share an intriguing story about my mother-in-law, Sarah. Currently, Sarah has very little influence in our lives because we've made the difficult decision to cut ties with her. Getting to this point of no contact was far from easy. Sarah epitomizes narcissism. While I'm no psychologist, she exhibits all the classic signs of a narcissistic personality. To put it bluntly, Sarah is self-centered and thoroughly unpleasant, always prioritizing her own needs above all else. In stark contrast, my husband Paul embodies everything she is not. I believe this difference largely stems from his upbringing, as he was primarily raised by his father after his parents divorced when he was young. Tragically, he only reconnected with Sarah after his father passed away from a terminal illness. From the stories Paul has shared, it's clear that Sarah is excessively controlling and manipulative. He once confided in me, Jamie, my mom demands so much from me. She feels entitled to everything I have and expects me to take care of her forever. He recounted how she used to take his entire paycheck when he started working during school. For years, Paul thought this level of control was normal, but I knew it wasn't healthy. You were essentially enslaved, I told him. You worked while she lounged around in her apartment. You need to make some serious financial changes. I know, he replied, his frustration evident. I've tried talking to her, but she always guilt-trips me about abandoning her or leaving her to fend for herself. I even suggested she find a job, but she refuses to listen. Paul struggled with his student loans while financially supporting Sarah, who had stopped working when he was just 17. The same year he landed his first job. From that point on, he became the family's primary breadwinner, isolated from their extended family and completely under Sarah's strict control. He had no friends because she didn't allow it, and he could barely afford a phone. When Paul went to college, he was introduced to a whole new world, despite Sarah's attempts to keep him from attending. It was there, away from her overwhelming influence and among diverse people, that he finally recognized how abnormal his upbringing had been. 3 years into our relationship, I felt compelled to confront him about it. Paul, your mother has been emotionally abusive towards you. She's manipulated you for years and squandered the inheritance your father left you. Why do you continue to support her? What can I do, Jamie? He replied, his voice heavy with resignation. She's still my mom. After years of hearing that she deserves my money, it's hard to break free. I can't cut her off entirely. She's the only family I have left apart from you. I understand that, I said gently, but you need to reconsider your situation. You're drowning in debt. How much longer can you keep this up? Paul didn't have an answer. He realized that continuing to support Sarah meant he'd never escape his financial burdens, which made me question our future together. I was acutely aware that Sarah could become a significant obstacle, potentially trying to stake a claim on everything we owned. She already resented our relationship, saying things like, "Don't think you can take my son and his money. I'm his mother and the only one who deserves his things. You're just a gold digger trying to steal him away." "You need to stop relying on Paul," I retorted. "He's an adult, and so are you. You're perfectly capable of taking care of yourself." "Shut up, girl. Don't tell me how to live my life. I won't lose my lifestyle to someone like you. Paul will always be under my control, and I'll make sure of it," she snapped back, her words piercing but failing to intimidate me. Unlike Paul, I had a strong backbone and a knack for subtle revenge, which empowered me to handle Sarah without letting her harm us too deeply, even if I often endured her insults. As time went on, I found Sarah increasingly bearable. Both Paul and I completed college. I began working at a studio while Paul secured a fantastic position as a graphic designer. Despite his challenging upbringing, he was a dedicated student who achieved significant success. However, Sarah continued to exploit his finances without remorse. When Paul and I got engaged, Sarah was furious. She accused him of marrying a gold digger and expressed her worries about her own welfare. "How can you even think of getting married now? You still need to take care of me. This would be a terrible financial decision." "Mom, I'm already taking care of you, and getting married won't change that," Paul reassured her, but Sarah remained unconvinced. "But your wife will take all your money. You'll have nothing left for me. She doesn't earn much, and her mother is no help either. They'll just become a burden to you." "Excuse me, but my mom and I can manage perfectly well on our own." "We don't need to rely on your son," I interjected calmly, though her accusations stung. I held back the urge to tell her that she was the real financial burden. I knew that would only spark a pointless argument. I preferred to maintain the peace. Sarah saw my silence as an opportunity to further insult me and my family. My family, valuing respect and dignity, chose not to retaliate against her barbs, opting not to stoop to the level of arguing with a narcissist. Despite Sarah's attempts to sabotage our wedding plans, Paul managed the situation well. Although it frustrated him, he couldn't bring himself to completely sever ties with her. After our wedding, we settled into our new home. The specifics of how we acquired the house aren't relevant right now, but when Sarah found out, she was livid. She called me seething. "So, you've already started messing with my son's money? Buying expensive houses without even discussing it with me?" "I have no idea what you're talking about, Sarah. Besides, how Paul and I manage our finances is none of your business," I replied, standing firm. I cut the conversation short, replying firmly. Sarah's resentment was palpable. "You think you can live in a big house while I'm stuck in this small rented apartment? Mark my words, Jamie, you won't enjoy my son's house alone." At the time, I brushed off her threats. She had a knack for making dramatic statements, and I had learned to ignore her, refusing to give her the reaction she craved. That was until one day when something alarming happened. While I was at work, my mom called, sounding puzzled and concerned. "Jamie, why is your stuff at my house? Did something happen with Paul?" "What are you talking about, Mom? Nothing is wrong between us." "How do you know it's my stuff?" "The moving guys told me your name," she explained. This unexpected turn of events hinted at Sarah's deeper meddling, a dark reminder that my strategy of ignoring her might no longer suffice. "Jamie, your boxes arrived here with your name and address on them. I've opened a few, and they're filled with your clothes. What's going on? Did the movers say who sent them?" My heart sank with a dreadful suspicion. "They mentioned someone named Sarah," she replied, her voice laced with concern. "I think you should come home right away and sort this out." Taking her advice, I left work in a hurry and rushed home. As I stepped into my bedroom, a shocking sight greeted me. My drawers and closet were empty, even my bath products were gone. I was stunned. Descending to the living room, I found Sarah sitting there with a smug expression on her face. What the hell is going on, Sarah? Why did you touch my stuff and send it to my mom's house? I demanded, struggling to keep my composure. Her response was chilling. I'm here to set things right. From now on, only the homeowner and his mother will live in this house. A mother always has more rights than a wife. It's unfair for you to live here. What are you talking about? You're out of your mind. I shot back, my anger rising. Since the house belongs to my son, only he and I will stay here. You need to leave and go to a house that's in your name. So, you're saying only the person who owns the house should stay here? I clarified, trying to comprehend her twisted logic. That's exactly right, she replied, a triumphant glint in her eye. What I mean is, since I've already sent your stuff away, you can just leave. Don't worry, my son and I will be very happy here, she declared before turning and heading upstairs. I was furious at her audacity, unable to believe she was trying to throw me out of my own house. This house was in my name, and I was the rightful occupant. I couldn't let her force me out without taking action, so I made a strategic call. I immediately phoned Paul, urging him to come home as quickly as possible. He assured me he'd be there soon. When my mom arrived to check on the situation, we were both deeply unsettled, but I knew we needed to stand our ground against Sarah's outrageous attempt to usurp our home. When Sarah saw my mother, she was visibly flustered. What the hell, Jamie? Why is your mother here? I told you that you and your family can't be here. I've already sent your stuff to your mother's place. Then why is she here? I replied with a smirk. Well, you said that from now on, only the homeowner and the mother can stay here. So I called my mother and invited her over. This house is owned by my son. You should not be here. Sarah countered sharply. I demand that you leave immediately. I couldn't help but laugh, finding the irony delicious, and my mother joined in. Though I was angry, the laughter provided a welcome relief, reminding me of what needed to be clarified next. Once we composed ourselves, I turned to Sarah with a calm demeanor. Just for your information, my dear mother-in-law, this house belongs to me, I began, my tone even but firm. Yes. This house is in my name. It was part of my inheritance from my grandfather, who passed away recently. You can't be telling the truth. I don't believe you. This house cannot be yours. I know my son got this house for you. Sarah sputtered, disbelief etched across her face. Just wait till he comes home and shows you your place. I will not tolerate you keeping me away from the house. Sarah's confusion was met with a blunt correction from my mother. She's telling the truth, Sarah. You have some messed up logic about deserving your son's things. Even if the house is Jamie's, you shouldn't be so entitled. Jamie is Paul's wife and is equally entitled to his assets. I don't take advice from freeloaders, Sarah snapped at Rebecca. I suggest you keep your mouth shut. As for Paul, I will stay with him and ensure he divorces Jamie soon. Just a few minutes later, Paul walked through the front door, clearly bewildered by the sight of his mother standing in the middle of our living room. He looked even more puzzled to see my mother, whom I hadn't told him I invited over. Hey, guys, what's going on here? He asked as he entered. Jamie, you told me to come home soon. Has something happened? Something has happened, Paul. Your overbearing mother and her mother are trying to take over your house, Sarah declared dramatically. Paul, taken aback, responded firmly, Mom, what the hell is going on? Why would you disrespect my wife and her mother? They're right here. He then turned to me, giving me the floor to explain. Let me tell you what happened, I began, ready to unveil the absurd scenario Sarah had orchestrated. Paul stood in the middle of our living room, utterly stunned as he processed what I had just explained. Oh my God, are you serious? Mom, did you pack up Jamie's belongings and send them to her mom's house? Did you come into our home and move our things? Who gave you the right to do that? I'm just trying to help you, Sarah protested, feigning innocence. You need to reconsider your marriage. I've been telling you not to tolerate her freeloading behavior. Trust me, I can find you a better wife. Mom, I've told you so many times not to interfere in my marriage. Why are you still doing this? Paul's voice was firm, his frustration clear. I'm standing up for you. Your wife will drain your finances if you don't end this. That's why I moved into your house. I'm going to stay with you. You need to stop saying it's his house. I interjected firmly. Sarah, I've already told you this house is mine. If any mother is staying here, it will be mine. Paul looked exasperated as Sarah continued her tirade. Look at what your witch of a wife is saying. I told you she's a gold digger. She's already claiming this house is hers. Mom, stop insulting Jamie. This is ridiculous. Paul snapped, his patience worn thin. She's right, the house belongs to Jamie. It was part of her inheritance after her grandfather passed away. Sarah's face turned to ashen as the truth finally dawned on her. My mother chuckled slightly from the corner, enjoying Sarah's discomfort, while Paul looked like he was on the verge of losing his temper completely. Desperate to regain her composure, Sarah scrambled for another angle. It doesn't matter, since you two are married. This house is yours too, Paul. I have the right to stay here. Why should I live in a rented apartment when you have a house? I won't let Jamie take everything from me. You need to kick her out, Sarah insisted stubbornly. Mom, you need to leave, Paul declared, his voice rising with each word. I've had enough of you meddling in my marriage. No matter how much you dislike Jamie, I am not leaving her. I've made that abundantly clear. You've gone too far with your antics. There's no way you're staying here. Your wife is blackmailing you with the house, Paul. You can't stay with her. Trust me, it'll be so much better if you divorce her. I can find you a new wife. Sarah tried to manipulate the situation further. The tension escalated, and chaos ensued. Paul began shouting at Sarah, his anger boiling over, while I joined in, equally furious at her outrageous behavior. It was clear that this confrontation was reaching a breaking point. Finally, fed up, I took decisive action and kicked Sarah out. She looked desperately at Paul for support, but he couldn't even meet her gaze. I stormed to the guest room, grabbed her suitcases, and threw them out the door alongside her. Sarah spent a solid hour weeping on our doorstep until I warned her I would call the police if she didn't leave. Eventually, she got up and left. Inside, Paul was overwhelmed with guilt and began to apologize profusely. My mother discreetly slipped into the kitchen to give us some privacy. Jamie, I'm so sorry. I should have cut ties with my mom a long time ago. All these years, she kept attacking you, and I still allowed her into our lives. I thought she might change and accept you as my wife. But it's clear now that she never will, he lamented. Paul, I understand she's your mom, and you felt a duty to take care of her. But her behavior has been unbearable. She tried to kick me out of my own home, I replied, my voice firm yet weary. I know, Jamie, and I can't believe she went that far. But don't worry, she won't get away with this. I'm going to stop supporting her financially. She doesn't deserve my kindness after what she's done. You won't have to deal with her again, Paul promised, his tone resolute. We spent a long time discussing our boundaries and expectations moving forward, reaching a solid understanding that brought me considerable relief. To lighten the mood, my mother stayed for lunch, and we ordered some delicious meals through DoorDash. Despite the morning's upheaval, the day turned out fairly well, aside from my belongings being displaced. It was, in a way, satisfying to finally show Sarah that her behavior was unacceptable. My mother had spoken to the moving company, ensuring everything would be taken care of moving forward. When we arrived at her place and explained the situation, they agreed to return my belongings, though it would take some time. In the meantime, Sarah didn't stop her attempts to stir up trouble. She bombarded Paul with calls and sent me a barrage of texts, accusing me of controlling him and forcing him to cut her off. I shared all her messages with Paul, who was livid and found himself in several heated exchanges with his mother over the following days. It felt like we were trapped in an endless cycle of chaos. That cycle finally broke when we decided it was time to take legal action. We reported Sarah to the police, pressing charges for trespassing, theft, and harassment. The police were taken aback by the extent of her actions and took our complaint seriously. While Sarah hadn't been violent, her behavior was anything but rational. After the incident, we informed Sarah about the police report and had our lawyers begin the process of obtaining a restraining order. However, this didn't deter her. She showed up at our house, furious and unapologetic. How dare you file a police report against me? I'm your mother, and I deserve respect. Paul, you can't do this to me, she screamed. I'm done being quiet. What you did was a criminal offense. I don't care what the law says. I'm entitled to be in this house. You've even stopped paying me money. I have nowhere to go. You know I did my least to live here. I demand you let me in and remove the police report. That will never happen, Mom. Besides, you don't deserve my money after trying to destroy my marriage, Paul replied firmly. Sarah, you need to stop shouting at our door. We decided that only the homeowner and her mother will stay here from now on, Since you are neither, you need to leave. My words pushed Sarah over the edge, causing her to have a breakdown right on our doorstep. Neighbors began peeking out of their homes, drawn by the commotion. At one point, a neighbor approached our front door to ask if he should call the police, but when Sarah lunged at him and shouted, he didn't hesitate to dial 911, letting them hear her outburst. My mother-in-law continued her tirade until the police arrived and arrested Sarah. This unfortunate spectacle provided us with the necessary evidence to secure a restraining order, especially since Sarah had also been harassing my mother. Then Paul suggested a surprising solution. "Jamie, I think we should let your mom stay with us for a while," he proposed. "Sarah knows her address and won't stop harassing her. She's becoming increasingly unhinged, and I'm worried she might escalate her behavior. It would be safest if Rebecca stayed here." "Are you sure about this, Paul? I don't want you to feel uncomfortable with her living here, and I don't think Mom would want to impose," I responded, concerned about how the dynamics might affect him. Paul assured me, "I feel bad for Rebecca, and it's the right thing to do. I don't mind at all. It's better for everyone's peace of mind if she stays with us for now." "I know Rebecca is a reasonable person, Jamie. I'd have no problem with her staying here. She's very respectful of our boundaries." That joke between us brought out a hearty laugh, lightening the mood despite the circumstances. I could see that Paul was still struggling with the fallout from his mother's actions, but he was earnestly trying to distance himself from her toxic influence. Cutting ties with a narcissistic parent is a complex and painful process, and we've been discussing therapy for Paul to help him navigate these emotional waters. He's open to the idea but needs some time to organize his thoughts. Understanding his mental state, I'm doing my best to support him. Meanwhile, cut off from directly contacting us, Sarah has been trying to appeal to my mom, Rebecca, to garner sympathy. She laments how unfairly she's been treated, claiming she has nowhere to go and is now living in her car. Over the years, Sarah has alienated so many people that no one is willing to take her in. Paul remains firm in his decision not to support her financially anymore, forcing Sarah to confront the reality of finding a job. An idea that terrifies her, especially with several police reports and an arrest on her record. We've reached a point where we are indifferent to her plight. I can candidly say that I am relieved to see Sarah facing the consequences of her actions. This tough love is long overdue, and while it's harsh, it's necessary for our peace and to finally bring some sanity back into our lives. Receiving an allowance without having to do household chores might sound ideal at first, but living with my mother-in-law, Doris, adds complexities to what could be an easy arrangement. As a 34-year-old web designer, I've adjusted to the ups and downs of freelancing, but Doris's constant sarcasm often dims the perks of this lifestyle. My husband, Bobby, and I face various challenges living with her, mostly because of our differing views on work and home responsibilities. After getting married, I transitioned from a corporate job to freelancing, a change that was well received by my former employer and myself. It's allowed me to maintain a steady stream of projects with familiar clients, freed me from daily commutes, and given me more time to focus on our home. Despite the benefits and Bobby's supportive attitude, Doris clings to her traditional beliefs about marriage and the role of a wife. In her mind, a wife should primarily be a homemaker, and she regularly makes her views known, dismissing the idea of modern shared responsibilities between spouses. To Doris, my freelance work seems insignificant, and she believes it doesn't contribute meaningfully to the household finances. I try my best to balance my web design projects with household chores when I have free time. But no matter what I do, Doris's opinions remain unchanged. Her dissatisfaction seems to stem from the contrast between my contemporary approach to work-life balance and her more traditional expectations. She likely views me as an outsider disrupting her family dynamic, especially since she's grown more reliant on Bobby since his father passed away 4 years ago. We live in the home Bobby's father purchased, which Doris now owns outright, thanks to life insurance settling the mortgage. This house serves as the backdrop for our intergenerational tensions, and navigating daily life here means managing conflicting perspectives while trying to respect both the old and new ways of family life. Despite the occasional tensions, the house, with its thoughtful design, comfortably accommodates our small family and provides me with the perfect workspace. It also doubles as a popular gathering spot for Doris's friends, many of whom have lived in the neighborhood for over 25 years. When they visit, the atmosphere shifts, and I often find myself playing the role of a gracious hostess, serving coffee and sweets as the group chats. Inevitably, their conversations drift toward sharing grievances about their daughters-in-law, a recurring topic of discussion. I sometimes find myself chuckling as Doris and her friends swap stories about their daughters-in-law. One tale that always gets a reaction is about a daughter-in-law who frequently flees to her parents' home after minor disagreements, sometimes staying away for nearly half the year. They label her as financially reckless, shaking their heads as they recount how her behavior has left their sons bewildered and even brought debt collectors to their doors. These discussions, which often take place near my workspace, sometimes turn into a sort of informal competition, each woman trying to outdo the others with stories of their troublesome daughters-in-law. Praises for daughters-in-law are rare in these sessions. However, on the rare occasion that one is commended for efficiently managing the household while holding down a job, Doris's reaction is always the same, sour. She dismisses such efforts with a casual wave of her hand, reducing my own freelance work to nothing more than a side gig. Even as the room fills with laughter, the blend of humor and critique reveals a lot about the generational divide in values and expectations surrounding family roles. These moments make it clear just how challenging it can be to reconcile traditional views with modern family dynamics. Amid the lively discussions and laughter that echo through our living room when Doris hosts her friends, my job often becomes the subject of scrutiny. Doris loudly questions the value of my work, openly wondering how much I actually make. This shift in the conversation inevitably leads to a discussion of the spending habits of daughters-in-law, with sharp contrasts drawn between their spending and the old-fashioned belief that the husband's income should be the family's primary support. The room always bursts into laughter, finding humor in the seemingly outdated nature of such expectations, even as these beliefs still linger in the background. I often feel overwhelmed by the repetitive stories and outdated views expressed during Doris's gatherings. To cope, I slip on my headphones and try to drown out the constant undercurrent of belittlement aimed at modern daughters-in-law, myself included. One evening at a family dinner, when Bobby suggested buying a new car, Doris immediately questioned why he needed my approval for such a decision. Despite Bobby's efforts to explain that we make major decisions together as a family, Doris insisted that since he had the driver's license, he should choose whatever car he wanted without my input. Caught in this tug of war, I tactfully deferred the decision back to him, a moment that perfectly encapsulated the complex dynamics at play in our household. Bobby, raised to value mutual decision-making, consistently seeks both my and his mother's input on major choices. Meanwhile, Doris, shaped by her late husband's more patriarchal approach, clings to the belief that such independence is normal. Every time Bobby asks for my opinion, it irritates her, leading to accusations that I'm too controlling. This recurring theme in our interactions reveals the tension between traditional and contemporary values in our family life, highlighting the difficulty of balancing respect for the past with the realities of a modern partnership. Struggling to respond to Doris's criticisms, I've come to recognize that I do tend to express my concerns rather than make decisions unilaterally. But my dismay grew when, during a recent argument, Bobby sided with his mother, blaming my vocal nature for his habit of consulting me before making any decisions. Several months into our marriage, it became clear that he rarely defended me in front of his mother. Even in private, his apologies and assurances that he prioritized our relationship started to feel hollow. This realization deepened with the car buying incident, which casts a long shadow over our relationship. Bobby, who had initially seemed considerate, ultimately failed to support me in front of his mother, raising serious doubts about our future together. I began wishing he wouldn't mistake his indecisiveness for kindness and hoped Doris would be more direct in her communication. A month later, Bobby's new car finally arrived. He and Doris were thrilled, inviting me for a celebratory drive. But the mood quickly shifted when the cost of the car was revealed, a staggering $300,000. This impulsive purchase, made without any real discussion, felt like the final straw in an already strained dynamic. I confronted my husband about the financial implications of such an extravagant purchase, but he brushed me off with dismissive responses, casually suggesting that we could just take out a loan. Doris immediately jumped to his defense, scolding me for questioning the expense. According to her, I had given Bobby the freedom to make his own choice, so why was I complaining now? Frustrated, I asked how we could possibly afford such a luxury, but Doris cut me off sharply. It's not like you pay for anything, so you have no right to complain. Feeling utterly unheard and marginalized in decisions that directly affected our shared life, I was left grappling with a sense of isolation in my own home. It became clear that my input was undervalued and that financial decisions were being made with little regard for joint consultation or responsibility. As I tried to assert my contributions to the household through my freelance work, Doris's reaction was unusually harsh. She scoffed at my efforts, dismissing my income as a little side job that couldn't compare to Bobby's substantial salary of over $130,000 a year. Her disdain was palpable, and just as I was about to defend myself, I noticed my husband had silently withdrawn from the confrontation, leaving me alone to face his mother's harsh words. After enduring this kind of treatment for too long, I finally reached my breaking point when Doris snapped, "A daughter-in-law, like you should just get out." Her words hit me like a slap in the face, not just an insult but a total dismissal of everything I had tolerated. Angered and deeply disappointed by Bobby's indifference, I turned to him and blamed him for the escalating conflict, knowing it stemmed from his chronic inability to stand up for me. Fed up, I said firmly, "Understood. Then I will leave." I walked to my workspace, gathered my computer and essentials, and prepared to leave. As I crossed the threshold, I informed Doris that I would return later to collect the rest of my belongings. Her angry gaze followed me, and just as I stepped out the door, she shouted after me, "When you step into this house again, it will be to sign the divorce papers." Her abrasive words echoed behind me, something I had never expected to hear, and they stunned me into silence. I sought refuge at my parents' house, shaken and unsure of what to do next. The moment my mother saw me, she knew something was wrong. She asked gently, "What happened?" Struggling to articulate the full weight of the events, I stood there, lost for words, feeling the heaviness of everything I had just walked away from. I shared my regrets with my parents, expressing how much my husband had changed from the man who once cherished me deeply. Talking through the situation brought some relief, and with no children complicating matters, my mother gently suggested I consider divorce sooner rather than later, especially since I was financially independent. Over the weekend, with my father's support, I began taking the necessary steps toward a new beginning, contemplating a future that, though uncertain, promised peace and self-respect. I returned to collect my belongings from the house I had shared with my husband and his mother. Both of them seemed to avoid any final confrontation. Standing outside my husband's room, I spoke softly, "You took care of me for a long time. Can you sign the divorce papers?" I slipped the documents under the door, and soon after, I heard his indifferent reply, "I've signed them. We're done here." Retrieving the signed papers felt like a hollow victory, marking the end of our marriage. I left without a word to my mother-in-law, carrying the deep sadness after 3 years in that house, a place with only a handful of happy memories. I went straight to the city office to submit the divorce papers, hoping the formal separation would help bring closure to this chapter of my life. My plan was to temporarily move back to my parents' home and continue working remotely as I started to rebuild my life independently. My mother suggested I stay with them for a while, reassuring me that it would be less worrying than living alone. My father shared similar concerns, cautioning that Bobby and his mother might unpredictably show up at my door. Although I initially thought that scenario was unlikely, living at my parents' home brought unexpected comfort. Thankfully, my job's flexibility allowed me to work remotely, and I extended my stay with ease. 3 months passed, and as Bobby and his mother slowly faded into distant memories, an unknown number suddenly appeared on my phone. Initially hesitant, I considered it might be a mistake or an unwelcome reminder of my past. After several persistent calls, I finally answered, only to hear my ex-husband's frantic voice on the other end. "Why didn't you answer the phone earlier?" he asked, sounding confused and somewhat panicked. Prepared to end the conversation quickly, I calmly replied, "There's no reason for us to communicate anymore," making it clear that I had moved on and had no interest in reopening old wounds. I was about to hang up, but his next question caught me off guard. "Wait a minute, why isn't my smartphone working?" he inquired. With little interest, I suggested he contact the phone company, but then a thought struck me. I asked if he had been making regular deposits into the joint bank account we used to share. Previously, we both contributed to this account, my steady salary along with his more variable income from selling health products, which was often insufficient due to its performance-based nature. Normally, I topped up the account at the end of each month, but for the last 4 months, only his contributions had been made. It dawned on me that I had left in the middle of the month, and the payments for the new car loan might have already begun. My ex-husband fell silent as the realization hit him. Calmly, I stated, "I've been managing our household expenses with my income until now. From this point forward, you'll need to take care of your own living expenses." Internally, I wanted to tell him, "You reap what you sow," but I held back and quietly ended the call. Reflecting on the situation, I realized that my ex-husband had never fully disclosed his actual earnings to his mother. She seemed unaware that our household had been primarily supported by my salary after we got married. Perhaps he was too embarrassed to admit that his wife was the main earner. It was clear that basic utilities like electricity and water shouldn't be disrupted so easily, which pointed to a deeper issue of financial mismanagement and lack of transparency. One of the many problems that had plagued our relationship. The fact that his mobile service was the first luxury to go was telling. One holiday morning, the house intercom buzzed insistently, signaling an issue at the door. My father responded sternly to the visitor, "We don't want to be involved with you anymore. Please leave." Sensing the gravity of the situation, I hurried to the entrance alongside my mother. Through the intercom, we heard the familiar voice of my former mother-in-law, pleading for a moment to talk. As I faced her just as my father had predicted, anger was evident on her face. She immediately launched into accusations, blaming me for not making the usual monthly deposits, which she claimed had led to their utilities being cut off. We were all taken aback, unsure of what she meant. My ex-husband attempted to step in, saying, "Mom, stop it. Doris is no longer involved with us." But his mother brushed him aside, continuing her tirade. "Bobby earns $7,500 a month. How could this happen?" she exclaimed. Her fury revealed the depth of their financial disarray, and in that moment, it became clear just how much they had relied on me, both emotionally and financially. I responded quietly, correcting her. The $7,500 was my income, not Bobby's. Shocked by this revelation, she turned to my ex-husband, who reluctantly admitted that his actual take-home pay was far less. My former mother-in-law looked at me in astonishment, unable to comprehend the truth. I explained that my income came from a steady job, not just an allowance. She then turned to Bobby and asked again about his earnings. He sheepishly confirmed what I had said, his own contributions amounting to about $1,500 monthly. After a moment of stunned silence, she made an astonishing proposal. "Doris, how about coming back?" It seemed ludicrous that she would ask me to return after insisting I leave in the first place. I refused firmly, making it clear there was no going back to the way things were. "We're already divorced," I stated bluntly, "and this is no longer my concern." Despite my clear refusal, she persisted, insisting that everything could be resolved if I just reconciled with Bobby. My father, growing increasingly impatient, spoke in a forceful tone. "Leave now," he demanded, "or I'll call the police." They left in a hurry, almost stumbling as they exited, my father sternly warning them never to set foot in our home again. Reflecting on the encounter, my mother was visibly furious, but my father's indignation was even more pronounced. I felt a deep sense of relief that we had finally severed ties with such unreasonable people. As time went on, I learned through a mutual acquaintance of Bobby's that his hardships had only deepened. He was forced to give up his parents' house and the land, moving into a modest apartment with his mother. The new car, which was rarely used, had been sold off to settle the remaining loan. Even after clearing his debts, Bobby continued down a path of financial irresponsibility, squandering what little he had left on gambling. Eventually, his whereabouts became unknown. Meanwhile, my former mother-in-law was diagnosed with dementia and now resides in a nursing home. On a brighter note, my career is thriving, and I am living independently. Recently, I started dating a colleague who is well aware of my past marriage. Unlike Bobby, he is dedicated to his job, financially responsible, and doesn't depend on his spouse for income or engage in reckless spending. While we haven't explicitly discussed marriage, I feel confident about our future together, sensing a genuine potential in our relationship that I never experienced before. Hello, my name is Julie, and I'm 42 years old. I've been reflecting on a particularly difficult time in my life that began when I decided to end my marriage to Thomas. It became increasingly clear that we simply weren't meant for each other. His childish and immature behavior constantly frayed my nerves, and the thought of being tied to him for life felt less like a partnership and more like a sentence. However, the strain in our marriage wasn't entirely due to Thomas. His mother, Martha, played a significant role in my distress from the very beginning. She made it clear that I would never meet her high expectations for her son. Her relentless criticism and subtle undermining eroded my confidence, making me feel like an outsider in my own home. I recall countless evenings returning home from work, yearning for peace, only to find Thomas absorbed in his video games, completely disregarding me and our shared responsibilities. Any attempt I made to voice my frustrations was met with indifference. "Thomas, I've had a tough day. Could you help out with some chores?" His typical response was dismissive. "Later, I'm in the middle of this game." This disregard extended beyond our daily lives. He even forgot our anniversary, brushing it off when confronted with a casual, "It's just a date. We can celebrate some other time." Another time, he invited his overbearing mother over without informing me, turning what I had hoped would be a peaceful weekend into an unwelcome family gathering. "She's my mom, Julie. She can come whenever she wants." "Don't be uptight," he said. Discussing financial planning was another sore spot. Talking about budgeting or savings with Thomas felt like conversing with a child. "You worry too much. Let's just enjoy our money. We'll figure it out later," he would argue. These examples only scratched the surface of the deep-rooted issues in our marriage, where my concerns were routinely dismissed and my feelings invalidated. At family gatherings, Martha took pleasure in belittling me, never missing an opportunity to criticize my appearance, career, or even my cooking. I remember one evening, after spending hours preparing a meal, I hoped for a little appreciation. "Martha, I spent hours on this dinner. I hope you enjoy it." Her response was sharp and cutting. "Well, let's see if it's even edible. I can't trust your cooking." Another instance involved a new dress I was excited about. "Martha, I found this beautiful dress that I think would look great on me." Her reply was equally dismissive. "Oh, sweetie, that dress is far too revealing for someone your age. You don't want to embarrass yourself, do you?" And when I tried to assert my parenting style, she was just as dismissive. "Martha, I would appreciate it if you didn't criticize my parenting decisions." "I know what's best for my children," she retorted. "Clearly, you don't, or you wouldn't be making such foolish choices. Honestly, what is wrong with you?" When I shared my efforts to adopt a healthier lifestyle, hoping for support, she belittled me. "Oh, please, you're wasting your time with all that exercise and dieting. You'll never look as good as me." Her justification was blunt. Whenever I asked her to stop making snide remarks about me to others, she responded with, "I'm just telling the truth, dear. People should know what they're dealing with when it comes to you." Martha's constant belittlement and disparaging comments became a relentless source of stress, undermining any positive aspects of my relationship with Thomas. The breaking point came when I realized I deserved more than this toxic dynamic. It was a difficult decision, but I filed for divorce, seeking liberation from the emotional turmoil that had consumed me. In court, I laid bare the irreconcilable differences and the detrimental impact of our marriage on my well-being. As the proceedings concluded, I began to feel the weight lifting. Martha, my ex-mother-in-law, could hardly conceal her pleasure. She leaped up, a twisted smile of victory spreading across her face, reveling in the dissolution of our marriage. Her delight in my supposed defeat was as blatant as it was unsettling. Finally free from the shackles of a troubled marriage, I stood in the courtroom as Martha proclaimed triumphantly that she had won her son back. "I've won. I finally won." Her declaration, soaked in delight, hung heavily in the air, igniting a surge of anger and indignation within me. How could she take pleasure in my pain, celebrating the end of my marriage as if it were her victory? I couldn't hold back my fury. With contempt lacing my voice, I confronted her, exposing the miserable and pathetic person she truly was. Instead of faltering, Martha only laughed, a cold, mocking sound that echoed through the courtroom. It was a cruel soundtrack to the closing of a chapter that had brought me nothing but distress. It served as a stark reminder that some people revel in the downfall of others, their joy twisted by bitterness. But her laughter only fueled my resolve to move beyond the toxicity that had ensued. Walked out of that courtroom, I left behind the ruins of a failed marriage and a toxic relationship, determined to reclaim my life. I vowed to reclaim my life and pursue the happiness that had long eluded me. Martha's mocking joy highlighted the struggles I had endured and the inner strength I had discovered. No longer would I allow the judgments of others or the cruelty of those intent on belittling me to define my worth. I was determined to rise above the bitterness and embrace the freedom that lay ahead. With each step I took, I embarked on a journey of self-discovery and healing, committed to building a life that reflected my true value. The road ahead was uncertain, but I faced it with unwavering resolve. The path to happiness might not be straightforward, yet the struggles and hardships I had faced had forged resilience within me. It was time to leave behind the drama, toxicity, and emotional scars, stepping into a future brimming with hope, self-love, and the promise of brighter tomorrows. Unfortunately, the story doesn't end here. When Martha gloated about her victory, she expected to gain something tangible, something she believed she had finally secured. But fate had other plans. She thought she would inherit a coveted family heirloom, the stunning diamond orchid necklace, a piece with exquisite design passed down through generations and valued at millions due to its rarity and craftsmanship. Whenever Martha saw the necklace, her eyes sparkled with unmistakable greed. Yet, throughout my marriage to Thomas, it remained tantalizingly out of her reach. During our years together, Martha often suggested selling the necklace to fund more practical needs, but each time, I firmly rejected her idea. I explained that the necklace was not only valuable, it held deep sentimental significance as a vital part of my family's legacy. Despite her relentless attempts to sway my decision, I stood resolute in my commitment to keep the necklace within my family. After the divorce was finalized, Martha believed she might somehow benefit from the necklace's value, thinking she could claim a share that would satisfy her materialistic desires. What she didn't know was that I had other plans in mind. A month had passed since the divorce when, unexpectedly, I heard a familiar knock at my door. When I opened it, I found Martha standing there, her face streaked with tears and her voice trembling. "Julie, please, I need to talk to you," she pleaded. Despite my mixed feelings, curiosity laced with reluctant sympathy, I stepped aside and let her in from the cold. Once settled in the living room, I encouraged her to share what was on her mind. Through her sobs, Martha struggled to articulate her thoughts, revealing the collapse of her carefully laid plans. "My plan, it failed, Julie. I thought I'd finally have what I wanted, but everything has gone wrong." With a hint of skepticism, I pressed her for details, intrigued by her apparent defeat. "What plan are you talking about, Martha? Why are you so upset?" Taking a deep breath, Martha tried to compose herself. "I thought that after the divorce, Thomas would be entitled to half of the heirloom's value," she confessed. Her scheme had hinged on manipulating her son to secure a piece of my family's treasure, a plan now clearly in ruins. I thought I had triumphed, but then Thomas dropped a bombshell that shattered all my hopes. Curiosity mixed with a dose of satisfaction urged me to lean in closer. "So what did Thomas reveal, Martha? I'm listening." Wiping away her tears, her voice filled with regret and disbelief, she said, "He told me he forgot to mention a prenuptial agreement he signed before we got married. It clearly stated that the heirloom, along with all your money, was completely off limits. I never stood a chance." I couldn't help but burst into laughter, a wave of relief and vindication washing over me. "Oh, Martha, you have no idea how much I anticipated this moment. I knew all along that your manipulative schemes would unravel." Martha's face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and anger. "You knew all along and still let me believe I had won? How could you?" Leaning back in my chair, a sense of triumph radiated from within me as I replied with a satisfied smile, "Oh, Martha, I didn't let you believe anything. You saw what you wanted to see. Blinded by your greed, I knew the truth would eventually come out." As the reality of her folly sank in, Martha's tears shifted to a mix of frustration and regret. She had played her hand, and it had spectacularly failed, leaving her with nothing. "I can't believe you signed that prenup," she said incredulously. "I was hoping to at least get some of your money after the divorce." "Martha, I signed the prenup precisely for situations like this. I anticipated a time when someone might try to take what's rightfully mine. You were never really about being the good wife, were you?" "How could you do this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "This isn't about being the good wife, Martha. It's about protecting myself and my assets from manipulative people like you. I had the foresight to secure my future," I explained, unapologetic. "But I need the money, Julie. I'm desperate," she pleaded, her desperation evident. "That's not my problem, Martha. You made your choices, and now you have to deal with the consequences. It's time for you to leave my house." "You're so cruel and selfish," she shot back. "I'm not the one who tried to deceive and manipulate for personal gain. You reap what you sow. Now please, leave." The room fell into an uncomfortable silence, punctuated only by Martha's sobs. The weight of her failed schemes filled the space, serving as a stark reminder of the consequences of her actions. As the reality of her situation dawned on her, Martha faced the painful truth. Her greed and deceit had left her with nothing. Despite her predicament, I remained firm, resolute in defending my rights and protecting what was rightfully mine. My experiences had taught me that trust and love should not blind one to the potential for betrayal. As Martha prepared to leave, her expression reflected a mix of anger and resignation, the bitterness of her choices hanging heavily in the air. With a resentful tone, she spat out, "You call me heartless. Martha, reflect on how you treated me throughout my marriage to Thomas. You were the one who was vindictive, cruel, and manipulative," I retorted. "You're exaggerating. I never treated you badly," she protested defensively. "Oh really? Shall I remind you how you purposefully excluded me from family events, belittled my achievements, and spread rumors about me? You seem to relish my distress." "I did no such thing. You're just trying to paint me as the villain." Martha's voice grew more desperate. "Enough of your lies and manipulation. Leave my house now, or I will call the police. I'm giving you an ultimatum," I declared firmly. "Please, Julie, just give me some money. I need it," Martha pleaded desperately. "You have 50 seconds to leave my property. This is your last chance." "You can't do this to me, Julie. I'm family," she protested. "Good riddance, Martha." As the seconds ticked away, her face twisted with anger, disbelief, and defeat. Realizing that her manipulative tactics had failed, she turned and walked toward the door. The tension in the air was palpable as she exited, leaving behind a trail of regrets and the consequences of her actions. A blend of relief and liberation washed over me as I stood tall, having cut ties with toxicity and reclaimed my independence. The next day, as if on cue, another figure from my past emerged, seeking reconciliation. "What do you want, Thomas?" I asked warily. "Julie, I need your help. I'm in a tough spot right now, and I was hoping—" "Save it, Thomas. I don't want to hear your excuses. You dare to call instead of facing me like a man? How cowardly can you be? I thought it would be better this way. Julie, please, just hear me out." "All right, Thomas. I'm listening," I said, bracing myself for what was to come. "Why don't you start by explaining how you constantly belittled my ambitions, mocked my dreams, and made me feel like I was never good enough? Do you even remember any of that?" "I don't know what you're talking about, Julie. Sure, we had our disagreements." "Disagreements?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "I call it emotional abuse. You try to undermine me at every opportunity, hoping to break my spirit. Well, guess what? I'm done with it. I deserve better." "Julie, please, I'm sorry for everything. I'm in a tough spot right now, and I thought maybe—" "It's funny, Thomas," I cut him off. "You agreed to the prenup, yet here you are, begging and sniveling. Didn't you know what you were signing, or did you just assume you'd change my mind later?" "I didn't fully understand it back then. I just knew that I loved you," he stammered. "Cut the crap, Thomas. You always had an angle, and now you're out of options." "Julie, I don't know what to say." "Yeah, I figured as much. You've always been at a loss for words when it matters. Listen to me, Thomas. This is the last time I'll say this. If you try to contact me again, I will get a restraining order. Do you understand?" "But Julie?" "No, Thomas. It's over. Goodbye." With that, I hung up the phone and deleted his number, feeling the sense of finality wash over me. I was finally free from both him and Martha, and the relief was palpable as I reflected on the journey I had traveled since the end of my tumultuous marriage. A profound sense of contentment washed over me. I found myself in a much better place both mentally and emotionally, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from my shoulders, allowing me to breathe freely again. Life had taken some unexpected turns, but now I was relishing the joys it had to offer, fully embracing my newfound independence. I ventured back into the dating world, meeting new people, and experiencing the exhilarating excitement of romantic connections. Throughout it all, I learned to value my worth and refused to settle for anything less than the love and respect I deserved. Beyond the thrill of new relationships, I found solace and empowerment in sharing my story. The journey I endured during my marriage inspired me to write a memoir recounting the trials and tribulations of my past. It stands as a testament to the strength I discovered within myself. A story of overcoming adversity and finding empowerment in the aftermath of a challenging life chapter. I unearthed a profound strength that serves as a beacon of hope, compelling me to share it with others who have walked similar rugged paths. My writing emphasizes the critical importance of self-love and the courage needed to escape damaging relationships. As I move forward, I can hear the distant rumblings of discontent from my ex-husband and former mother-in-law, their envy unmistakable as they observe my blossoming success and well-being from afar. Their miscalculation of my inner fortitude has left them grappling with the repercussions of their actions. While I've distanced myself from their toxicity, their attempts to tarnish my reputation persist. Martha and Thomas have made a few feeble attempts to discredit me, trying to drag me down to their level of despair. Yet I remain unshaken and undeterred, firm in my resolve to take legal action against their defamatory statements. Their provocations only fuel my determination to see justice served. This new chapter of my life is steeped in gratitude for the resilience I've discovered within and for the solid support system surrounding me. Encircled by friends and family who uplift and inspire me, they cheer on my transformation and motivate me to continue reaching for greater heights. From the ruins of a shattered marriage, I have emerged not only unscathed but fortified, enlightened about my worth and more determined than ever to live freely and fully. This journey, though fraught with challenges, has catapulted me to a realm of self-empowerment and authenticity. My life's narrative is no longer defined by the shadows of pain but illuminated by the triumphs of overcoming and thriving. Having moved past the darkness, I now bask in the light of promising new beginnings. As I pen the ongoing chapters of my life, I approach each page with renewed purpose, seizing the happiness that had previously eluded me. Every word I craft is a step toward reclaiming my voice, my power, and my essence. My quest for revenge was never about stooping to their level, but about ascending beyond it, showcasing the robustness and elegance inherent in my spirit. I am duly reborn from adversity, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, ready to soar to unprecedented heights and leaving the remnants of my past far behind in the dust. During dinner at a restaurant, my mother-in-law made a deeply hurtful remark, suggesting that I didn't belong simply because I wasn't related by blood. Her words stung, making me feel undervalued, and I had the sudden urge to leave. As I rose to go, she demanded that I pay for the meal since I was leaving early. Feeling mistreated, I refused to pay for everyone else's dinner. My name is Samantha, and I work in an office. My husband, Peter, and I have a generally happy marriage, but there's one significant issue: his mother. She constantly criticizes me and interferes in our lives. Although I've shared my concerns with Peter, he doesn't see it as a problem, believing her actions are just signs of affection. Over time, her intrusions worsened. She had a key to our home, given to her by Peter, and would let herself in uninvited, critiquing everything from my housekeeping to spreading unfounded rumors about me to our neighbors. I begged Peter to consider moving, but he was too preoccupied with work to address the situation. Then came a turning point. Peter received a significant promotion and a raise after completing a major project. I saw this as a chance for a fresh start and suggested we think about starting a family now that we were financially stable. I hoped this would make him realize the negative impact his mother was having on our lives and see the need for change. However, Peter had a different perspective. He believed that if we were going to start a family, we should live in a more child-friendly town with good daycare options and parks, unlike our current neighborhood. After some discussion, Peter finally agreed to move, and I was thrilled. But my joy was short-lived. The very next day, my mother-in-law showed up unannounced, as usual. I braced myself for her typical criticisms, but she was surprisingly pleasant. She came to celebrate Peter's recent success and invited us to dinner at a fancy restaurant known for its exceptional food and service. "It's posh, and everyone raves about it," she said, inviting me to join her. "That sounds nice," I replied, keeping my tone polite despite my lingering frustration with her. "Clear your schedule. I really want you to come," she insisted, ignoring my attempts to decline. "Don't say no. We want you there," she added firmly, leaving me no choice. After she left, smirking, I felt something was off. She had excluded me from events before, but now she was adamant about including me. Later, I discussed it with Peter, who revealed that his mother had already arranged for us all to attend together, specifically choosing this restaurant to celebrate as a family. This sudden shift in her behavior left me conflicted. Peter was excited about the dinner. "Don't you feel the same, Samantha?" he asked. But I couldn't share his enthusiasm. "Sorry, but I'm not excited. I'm worried about how much it's going to cost at such an expensive restaurant, I admitted, my unease growing with each passing moment. I don't want to go. Just tell them I have something urgent and enjoy yourself, I told Peter, feeling a growing sense of unease about the dinner. Why are you being so negative? He asked, clearly frustrated. It's not just us. My brothers and their wives are coming too. It would look bad if you weren't there with the whole family. I could see how excited he was about dining at such a fancy venue for the first time, but I felt trapped. My reluctance was brushed aside, and it seemed like my husband was more aligned with his mother's perspective than mine. Feeling unsupported and desperate, I took a drastic step. I ordered a voice recorder online, suspecting that the harassment from my mother-in-law wouldn't end at this celebration. I planned to discreetly record her behavior, hoping it would finally make Peter understand what I had been enduring. If he continued to dismiss my concerns, I even considered divorce. Oddly, preparing for that possibility brought me a slight sense of relief. As the day of the dinner approached, I felt somber and filled with apprehension. I hardly knew Peter's brothers, having only met them briefly at our wedding, and my interactions with their wives were limited to basic pleasantries. When we arrived at the restaurant, we were escorted to a private room. Inside, my mother-in-law, Peter's brothers, and their wives were already seated. Peter glanced around, perplexed. Did the waiter get the seating wrong? He asked, noticing there was no seat for me. I'll go ask. Everyone please start without me. He stepped out of the room to speak with the staff. As soon as he was gone, my mother-in-law stood up, her expression cold and stern. There's no seat for you, she said, her tone biting. Why would I invite a stranger who just married my son to a family celebration? Her words stung, but before I could respond, she continued. You have a choice. Prove you really want to be part of this family, or leave and never come back. Decide now. I didn't hesitate. I'm leaving, I said firmly, rising from the table without a second glance. I'm leaving, I stated firmly, without a moment's hesitation. My mother-in-law looked startled, as if she had expected me to beg for her acceptance instead. Listen to me carefully, she continued, undeterred by my response. If you pay the entire bill for everyone here, I'll acknowledge you as Peter's wife. I understand you must feel frustrated being treated like an outsider. So pay up and become part of the family. I already told you, I'm leaving. Why should I cover the expenses for someone else's family gathering? I retorted, turning to go. She slammed her hand on the table and raised her voice. Can't you see I'm offering you a chance to be part of the family? Are you really okay with remaining a stranger? Pay up. No, I replied calmly. I'm perfectly fine being seen as a stranger. And since I'm not family, I won't be paying for your meal. Goodbye, mother-in-law. With finality, I turned and walked out of the room. She tried to follow, but by the time she reached the doorway, I was already gone, leaving the confrontation and the oppressive dinner behind me. By the time I reached the exit of the restaurant, I was determined to go straight home and send Peter an email explaining the entire ordeal. To my surprise, he arrived home just 15 minutes after I did. He explained that the waiter had confirmed there was no mistake with the reservation. My mother-in-law had deliberately caused the scene. It turned out that my decision to stand up for myself had a ripple effect. The wives of Peter's brothers had witnessed the incident, and their perspective on the family dynamics shifted dramatically. The wives who had silently endured similar mistreatment from my mother-in-law found strength in my actions. Emboldened by my stand, they too decided to leave the restaurant, making a decisive statement of solidarity. Their husbands, the eldest and third sons, quickly followed them out. I braced myself for the inevitable backlash, and sure enough, within 4 hours, my phone began ringing nonstop. It became so incessant that I eventually blocked her number, but one call slipped through from an unknown number. Hello, sorry for calling so late. Is this Samantha's mobile phone? The man on the line introduced himself as a police officer from a nearby station. He explained that after everyone had left the restaurant, my mother-in-law had stayed behind, trying to continue eating. Shockingly, she attempted to charge the bill to me. However, the restaurant staff, already displeased with her earlier behavior, denied her request. They believed I had no intention of returning to settle the bill, especially after leaving upset. Finding herself in a bind, my mother-in-law was advised to pay by card, but she had neither a card nor enough cash to cover the expenses for everyone's meals. Desperate, she tried to reach out to other family members for help, but none responded to her calls. Frustrated and enraged, her anger escalated. and she began breaking expensive vases and flower pots inside the restaurant. The disruption prompted the staff to call the police. When the officers arrived, they managed to calm her somewhat, but she remained defiant, refusing to take responsibility for the chaos she had caused. With the restaurant yet to be compensated, the staff requested the police to escort her home. Feeling the sense of duty, despite having ignored the earlier calls, my husband and I reluctantly returned to the restaurant to address the situation. Upon arrival, we found the police still attempting to pacify my mother-in-law. The moment she saw me, she glared and shouted, "You're useless. This mess happened because you didn't pay the bill. Isn't it only natural to help your mother? Pay up now." Her nearly threatening tone, especially in front of law enforcement, took me aback. The officers had made it clear that if no one took responsibility, they would have to either escort her to a family member's home or arrest her for attempting to leave without paying the bill. Exasperated and determined to end the drama, I responded firmly, "Please take her away. Arrest her or do whatever you need to do. But make her take responsibility." My mother-in-law looked stunned by my assertiveness. "How could you say something so heartless? I can't believe it. Just pay the bill. It's bad luck to have a family member arrested," she pleaded. But my resolve was unshaken. "I don't care. I'm not family, and I don't want to be associated with someone who's acting irrationally and causing a disturbance," I replied. With that, I turned to leave the restaurant, determined to let the police handle the situation. All I wanted was to distance myself from the chaos and ensure my mother-in-law faced the consequences of her actions. Just as I was about to walk out, my husband, who had been silent until now, suddenly spoke up. "I understand what happened was awful for Samantha, but is it really serious enough to warrant an arrest?" he asked, coming to his mother's defense. "You're missing the point," I shot back. "She's in trouble with the police because she tried to leave without paying and caused a scene. It has nothing to do with me. Or are you suggesting I should be responsible for paying for 7 people's meals when I didn't even eat?" My husband fell silent, then walked past me towards the police and the restaurant staff. Anticipating his next move, I called out, "If you're going to pay for her meal and compensate them, we're getting divorced. Think about that." He didn't respond to my ultimatum. Instead, he quietly took out his wallet. Feeling hurt and betrayed, I left the restaurant, walking back home alone. Once home, I began packing my essential belongings, my decision to leave solidifying with every item I placed in my bag. Just before midnight, my husband returned. "Mom's not getting arrested," he sighed, clearly exhausted. "She was in the wrong, but the restaurant said they'd forgive her if I compensated them and promised she wouldn't come back. I didn't have enough money, so I called my brothers to help. I'm so tired," he went on, recounting the night's events, his frustration growing as he noticed my silence. Finally, he saw the packed bags. "What's with these bags?" he asked, confusion evident on his face. "I'm getting ready to leave," I replied, my voice steady. "We're getting divorced." His face fell as the weight of my words hit him, and I knew the rift his actions had caused was too deep to repair. "I told you that if you sided with her, we get divorced. You can't say you didn't hear me," I declared, my voice steady and resolute. My husband's face showed pure shock, his eyes wide with astonishment before his expression shifted, and he began raising his voice. "What's happening? You've been acting so strange today. I understand that Mom did something terrible, but why does this have to lead to divorce?" he exclaimed. "I've told you countless times that I'm being mistreated," I countered, frustration seeping into my tone. "Even with all the evidence and others backing me up, you still chose your almost arrested mother over me. Isn't it reasonable that I want to divorce someone who behaves like that? I've had enough." He continued to protest, but I barely listened. My mind was already focused on leaving the house and taking the necessary steps for a divorce. The very next morning, I went straight to get the divorce papers. When I handed them over to my husband, he made a dramatic show, lamenting how he didn't want a divorce. However, the moment I mentioned involving a lawyer, his reluctance disappeared, and he signed the papers. I sent them off immediately, marking the official end of our marriage. Finally, I felt a profound sense of freedom, reclaiming my independence. Soon after, my now ex-husband moved out and went to live with his parents. It turned out he had relied heavily on me for household chores, and without me, he struggled to manage on his own. The apartment quickly fell into disarray, and disliking the mess, he ended the lease and returned to his parents' home. A similar fate befell his eldest and third brothers. On the day my husband called them to help with the financial compensation at the restaurant, both encountered conflicts with their wives. Their wives have refused to pay for a debacle caused entirely by their mother-in-law. These tensions expose deeper issues in their marriages, revealing a pattern of behavior far beyond my situation. However, both brothers chose to dip into their savings to help their mother without consulting their wives. This financial decision sparked heated disputes and strained their marriages, leading to serious talks of divorce. Ultimately, both brothers moved back to their parents' home, joining my ex-husband and mother-in-law. Like their mother, they refused to engage in any housework, preferring to rely on others. The entire family dynamic became the talk of the neighborhood, fueling endless gossip. Neighbors whispered about how the wives had allegedly abandoned their husbands, but in truth, they were simply standing up for themselves against a toxic family environment. In the end, my mother-in-law and her 3 sons, reluctant to grow up and take responsibility, found themselves all living together again, trapped by the very behaviors that had driven their families apart. The 3 brothers, in response, received staunch support from their mother, who blamed all the family strife on their wives. My ex-husband, hearing about this, nodded smugly, convinced that divorcing me had been the right decision. Despite the swirling rumors, my relationship with the neighbors remained strong. They knew all too well about my mother-in-law's difficult personality and kept a respectful distance from her, occasionally sharing quiet laughs about her antics. Over time, my mother-in-law developed a notorious reputation in the neighborhood as a parent who had failed to properly raise her sons. My ex-husbands were labeled as mama's boys, criticized for siding with their mother instead of supporting their wives. Despite their attempts to reach out to me, I took decisive steps to start anew. I changed all my contact details and moved to a new house, ensuring they couldn't find me, securing my peace and beginning a fresh chapter far from the turmoil of the past. Since cutting ties with my mother-in-law and her side of the family, my life has transformed remarkably for the better. The relief of no longer having to deal with the constant stress and drama she caused is immense. Even more, the opportunity to form new friendships has greatly enriched my life. During the turbulent time of my divorce, I found unexpected camaraderie with the ex-wives of my former husband's brothers. Our shared experiences with my mother-in-law brought us together, and we've since grown close. Now, we frequently meet up for meals and enjoy weekend shopping trips. Ironically, I find myself grateful to my ex-husband for one thing, introducing me to these incredible women who have become dear friends. In just 3 days, we're planning to explore a new cafe in town. It's refreshing to engage in activities that bring us joy, free from the toxic relationships of the past. This newfound freedom is incredibly liberating. I'm now living the life I've always wanted, surrounded by friends who uplift and support me. Reflecting on how different my life would have been without these friendships, I realize how much they've filled a void I hadn't even recognized. For that, I am profoundly grateful. I cherish these bonds deeply and hope they last a lifetime, as they have truly changed my perspective on what it means to have supportive, meaningful relationships. Alright, this is one of those rare occasions where I feel compelled to share my situation. Normally, I handle these things privately, but this particular issue has grown far too complex to manage alone. Let me start from the beginning. In my household, my husband, Bobby, has an incredibly close relationship with his family, especially his parents. His devotion to them runs so deep that he fulfills their every request without question, regardless of how unreasonable it may seem. This unwavering loyalty has started to become a problem. The Bobby refuses to acknowledge it. Every time I try to talk to him about it, he becomes defensive and dismisses my concerns. The main issue, and the reason I'm seeking advice, is that Bobby has always gone above and beyond for his parents. From the very start of our marriage, he's felt obligated to indulge their wishes. I understand the importance of caring for one's parents. I would do the same if mine lived closer. But there has to be a limit. Unfortunately, Bobby doesn't see it that way. Since we both started earning steady incomes, his parents have often asked us for money. The strange thing is, they aren't struggling financially. In fact, they live quite comfortably and can easily afford their own luxuries. At first, I went along with it because, well, they're his parents and I wanted to respect that. But as time went on, I started feeling uneasy. We sent them so much money over the years, enough that we could have taken a few international vacations by now. I've tried explaining to Bobby that while we're doing fine financially, it's irresponsible to keep funneling so much of our extra income to his parents. We need to start thinking about our own future, saving for kids, buying a home, making significant purchases down the line. At first, he seemed to understand where I was coming from, but before long, the conversation turned into an argument. He insisted that since we're living comfortably, why shouldn't we help his parents out with the extra money? It's not that I want to stop helping them altogether. I just think there needs to be a balance between supporting them and taking care of our own future. That's what I'm struggling with, finding that balance. Bobby, however, remains firm in his decision to keep supporting his parents financially, and it's driving a wedge between us. The situation has frustrated me to the point where I almost walked out during one of our arguments. My anger boiled over when I remembered how his parents treated me in the past. If they had ever made me feel like part of the family, maybe I could be more understanding. But they never accepted me. They weren't there for us when we needed them most. I can still remember when Bobby and I were just starting out, fresh out of college, and barely making ends meet. We went to his parents, hoping for a little help to buy our first home, only to be met with cold refusal. They didn't even take a moment to consider our situation. Instead, we were lectured about adult responsibilities and how we needed to learn to save for ourselves. It was less about offering guidance and more about dismissing our struggles entirely. And now, years later, here we are, sending them money they don't even need, while Bobby refuses to see the bigger picture. Despite my frustrations, I don't know how to get through to him. I bit my tongue, choosing to keep my thoughts to myself. It was disheartening to see Bobby's parents so unwilling to help their own son, but I resigned myself to accept their decision if Bobby could make peace with it. However, the issue resurfaced about a year and a half ago when I inherited a house from my mother. It was a lovely property, but it needed major renovations. While we had saved some money, it wasn't nearly enough to cover the necessary repairs. This recurring pattern, needing financial assistance and being repeatedly rejected by Bobby's parents, who nonetheless had no issue asking us for money, began to strain how I viewed our relationship dynamics. The constant tug of war over finances exposed a painful imbalance. They were more than willing to take from us but refused to offer help when we needed it most. Faced with the challenge of making the inherited house livable, we decided to approach his parents again, hoping this time they might be willing to lend a modest sum. Unfortunately, they refused once more. This time, they told us to stop asking for their money and to figure things out on our own. They even suggested I sell the house, dismissing it as a waste of space and something that looks like crap. Their words cut deep. This house wasn't just a property to me, it was a cherished connection to my mother, filled with memories and sentimental value. I bit back my hurt and anger, thinking it would be impolite to react at the time, though part of me now wishes I had spoken up. Maybe if I had, their blatant disregard for our situation might not have been so bold. But instead, I chose to let it go. Determined not to let their rejection stop me, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I worked tirelessly, scraping together funds, and poured every bit of my effort into the renovations. Slowly but surely, as I started earning more, the project became more manageable. After months of hard work, the house was completely transformed into something beautiful, a home I was incredibly proud of, a testament to my dedication. A few months later, I finally had the chance to show off what I had accomplished. I invited my in-laws over for dinner to celebrate my mother-in-law's birthday, and by that time, the house looked stunning. I was proud of all the hard work I had put into transforming it and hoped the evening would go smoothly. Typically, our family gatherings are peaceful as long as the conversation doesn't revolve around money, which is always a sensitive topic with them. When they arrived and saw the renovations, I could tell they were taken aback. Their eyes widened as soon as they stepped inside, clearly surprised by how much the house had changed. Internally, I felt a small sense of satisfaction, knowing they hadn't expected me to achieve such a dramatic transformation. They complimented the house profusely, which was flattering at first, but soon their praise began to feel overwhelming. They started inspecting every corner, asking detailed questions about how much everything had cost. At first, I tried to brush it off as natural curiosity. After all, they knew we hadn't had a lot of extra money to spare, and they hadn't contributed a dime to the renovations. But as their questions continued, it became clear their interest wasn't about admiring the hard work. I could feel them tallying up the expenses in their heads, trying to figure out exactly how much we had spent. It was intrusive, almost demeaning, as if the value of my efforts could only be measured by how much money we had poured into the project. The dinner itself started off well enough, with light, enjoyable conversation, but things quickly shifted when my mother-in-law brought up the subject of dream vacations. She asked me about my ideal getaway, but I could tell by her tone and her disinterested expression that she wasn't really listening. It felt like she was just waiting for me to finish speaking. Her sudden excitement after my brief response seemed forced, which only heightened my suspicions. And soon, the real reason for their visit emerged. They wanted us to help finance a vacation home. After years of refusing to help us when we needed it, here they were, asking us to contribute to a luxury they desired, a vacation home, no less. They were well off and more than capable of saving for it themselves, so why were they turning to us for help? It became clear that they had assumed, based on the renovations I had managed to complete, that we must be flush with cash. Nothing could have been further from the truth. When I asked them to explain why they needed a vacation home, their answer was simply that they were bored and wanted a change of scenery for weekends. I was shocked by their sense of entitlement. I calmly explained that we didn't have extra money to spare for something so extravagant, but then Bobby's reaction stunned me. He turned to me with a look of disbelief, as if I had just committed a terrible offense. "Spending on my parents' happiness is never a waste," he said coldly, his glare making it clear he didn't share my frustration at their request. I had to be careful with my words, though the situation left me baffled and hurt. Bobby's reaction highlighted a deeper issue in our relationship, our differing priorities and understanding of financial responsibility. Deep down, Bobby knew I was right. A vacation home was hardly a necessity, certainly not a matter of life and death. His father still had a job, and they could easily save up for such a luxury on their own. But instead of doing that, they seemed intent on having us finance their comfort. Then it hit me. Bobby wasn't an only child. He had an older brother, Jack. So why weren't they asking him for the money? When I brought this up, the mood in the room shifted, and I could feel the tension rise. It turned out they didn't want to burden Jack because he wasn't as financially stable, or so they claimed. He had children, they argued, and his expenses were focused on his family. I pointed out that Jack's financial situation wasn't all that different from ours. He earned about the same, but his money went toward his children. I mentioned that Bobby and I planned to start a family soon, and continually supporting his parents could jeopardize our ability to provide for our future kids. Their response was dismissive. Since we didn't have children yet, they argued we should have plenty of funds to spare. What followed was an onslaught of emotional manipulation, though it wasn't directed at me. They knew I wouldn't bend. Instead, they aimed their pleas at Bobby, lamenting their loneliness and boredom now that both of their sons were busy with their own lives. They painted the vacation home as a solution to their isolation, and Bobby, always the dutiful son, swayed by their emotional appeal. I found myself in a delicate situation, trying to navigate these increasingly fraught discussions without letting my in-laws realize they had backed us into a corner. But things took a drastic turn just a week ago. Bobby and I had the worst argument we've ever had. Though it never turned physical, his words cut deep. He told me that the $420,000 he planned to give his parents wasn't just mine to decide on. He claimed he had been considerate in the past by asking for my opinion, but no longer felt obligated to seek my approval. The argument hit its peak when he went ahead and transferred the money to his parents, without any further discussion with me. I only found out when my mother-in-law casually mentioned receiving the funds as if it were no big deal. I was furious, not just about the money, but about the blatant disrespect for our shared decision-making in our marriage. Bobby's secretive actions left me feeling deeply betrayed, sparking a fierce debate over our financial priorities and the respect we owed each other. He knew I opposed his decision, yet he went ahead and donated the entire $420,000 he had saved over the years to his parents, leaving us with nothing. When I confronted him and urged him to retrieve the funds, he dismissed me outright, insisting he would manage his relationship with his parents on his own. Despite my reminders that significant financial decisions should be made together, he wouldn't hear it. Our disagreement seemed to have worn him down. In the heat of our argument, he shockingly threatened me with divorce. He shouted that if I interfered with his choice to support his parents financially, he would leave me. The absurdity of it hit me hard. I had stood by him through every high and low, and now he was willing to abandon our marriage for the sake of his parents' desires over our shared future. I couldn't help but question whether he cared at all about the plans we had made together. Building a life, having children, and finding happiness as a unit. It seemed to me that none of it mattered to him anymore. His focus was solely on fulfilling his parents' wishes while I felt neglected and sidelined. In a moment of anger, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. A week has passed since that day, and he hasn't come home. Despite my countless texts, calls, and voicemails, he continues to ignore me or leave me hanging. The hurt runs deep. I never imagined something like this could drive Bobby away. When I reached out to my in-laws, I discovered he had been staying with them since he left. He hasn't returned home even once. I'm overwhelmed with stress and confusion, grappling with the fear that our marriage could be ending over what feels like a trivial disagreement yet is so profound. As the days stretch into more than a week without Bobby, the uncertainty of our future looms heavily over me. I had reached a pivotal moment. Initially, I was hesitant, unsure if severing ties was truly the right decision. But the ongoing chaos, coupled with the blatant disregard from Bobby and his family, solidified my resolve. If Bobby was threatening divorce, then perhaps that was the inevitable path we were headed toward. So I took the initiative and contacted my lawyer that very morning. During our conversation, my lawyer laid out my options, not only regarding the divorce but also potential legal actions given the circumstances. As we spoke, another stark realization hit me. I no longer wanted to be tied down by the memories within the walls of the house my mother had left me. Once a symbol of her love, the house had become a constant reminder of the tumultuous times with Bobby. Determined to move forward, I made the decision to sell the house. It was entirely in my name, a final gift from my mother, which legally allowed me to sell it without Bobby's consent. The sale turned out to be quite profitable, providing me with the financial security I needed to navigate the legal proceedings ahead. The very next day, after finalizing the divorce papers, I had them sent to Bobby. I knew exactly when he received them because my phone rang almost immediately afterward. It was Bobby, furious, incredulous. He ranted about how absurd I was being, claiming he had been planning to file for divorce anyway. His shock only deepened when he learned about the legal actions I had already initiated. The call was heated, filled with accusations and disbelief, marking a clear turning point in what had become an irreparable rift. Bobby completely lost his temper during the conversation, and as his anger escalated, I realized I couldn't take it any longer. Midway through his tirade, I hung up on him. As the days led up to the court case, I was a bundle of nerves. My mind was flooded with worries about the potential outcomes. What if the court ruled against me? What if I ended up losing everything, including the money? The uncertainty gnawed at me, but I knew I had to push through, see this to the end. Despite my fears about the future, I didn't allow them to overwhelm me. I dressed confidently, put on my best smile, and walked up to the courthouse, ready to face whatever lay ahead. It was the day of the final hearing for our divorce, and to my surprise, everything turned out incredibly well. Not only was I able to keep all the proceeds from the sale of the house, but the court also ordered Bobby to pay me a substantial amount in alimony, fulfilling his legal obligation. This outcome was unexpected, especially receiving more money from Bobby, but it felt justified given the emotional and mental toll his actions had taken on me. Accepting this money felt like a reclaiming of my dignity. The disapproval and shock on my in-laws' faces as the verdict was read brought me a sense of vindication. They likely never anticipated that their manipulation would backfire so severely. They had thought they could exert control over me without consequences, but instead, they ended up losing significantly. Since then, life has been relatively calm. I did receive a harsh call from my mother-in-law who criticized my actions, accusing me of selfishness and lacking the ability to care for others. She even went as far as to say I would never be able to start my own family. Despite her words, I've been able to move forward. I used the money from the house sale to secure a new apartment for myself, where I could finally save without the constant pressure and demands from others. However, a part of me still questions the measures I took. Was taking him to court too extreme? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, so please share your opinions in the comments below. The situation took a surprising turn, but I felt it was necessary under the circumstances. As I scrolled through the comment section of my latest post, the range of opinions was striking. Some commenters defended Bobby, questioning what was the big deal about giving his parents $420,000 if he had $550,000. On the other hand, many disagreed vehemently, supporting my perspective. They pointed out that we had been financially assisting his parents for years while trying to establish our own financial security and save for a house. The debate in the comments was clearly divided. A significant number criticized my decision to sell the house and keep the money, labeling it disrespectful, given that the house was legally in my name. However, about half of the commenters backed my actions, asserting that it was exactly what I needed to do in light of the circumstances. So let's open this up for further discussion. Drop your comments below, and let's dive deeper into this situation.